So again, good afternoon. I hope everybody is safe and healthy where they are watching from. My name is Patch Dulay. I am the founder and CEO of the Spark Project. And this afternoon, we will be having a workshop on a deeper dive on financial vital signs. Before that, the Spark Project, we're a crowdfunding website. We enable creative and conscious enterprises through learning and technology. And we also work closely with a lot of impact-driven organizations. We collaborate with them on their social innovation projects and programs. And for this particular workshop, we're very happy to be partnering with the Social Innovation Group of Globe Telecom. So 2 weeks ago, we did a 1-hour webinar on financial vital signs. Some of you guys might were there, and we had a lot of requests to have something more in-depth to help them with their enterprises. Nabitin daw sila with the webinar, the 1-hour webinar we did. So right now, we're doing a deeper dive into that webinar. I believe myself, no, accounting and finance is something that's very important for any founder. No matter how big or small your enterprise is, for any business, cash is king. And if we want to continue doing business and creating impact with our social enterprises, we have to make sure that it's sustainable. So that's why we decided to do a deep dive workshop on this topic. So this is more than 1 hour to help all of us to have more confidence and take on to 2021 having a better understanding and strategy of our business finances. So I'm excited to introduce your speaker for this afternoon and trainer. Before I introduce her, I just want to make sure that her video is there. Hi. So our resource person for this afternoon is Pinky Po. She is a partner at ATBP. She is a business administration and accountant graduate at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She's a CPA and holds a master's degree in entrepreneurship for social enterprise and development at the Ateneo Graduate School of Business. But more than that, she is my favorite accountant of ATBP. Hi, Pinky. Thanks for joining us this afternoon and for taking the time to to sit down with us and handhold us through this topic of financial vital signs. Oh, you're still on mute. Oh, wait. Just one moment. Technical difficulties as usual. Just give me a moment. I will put okay. Okay.
There goes. All right. Yeah. You can hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So just let me know if you want me to go or you're gonna.
Yeah. Before we start, and for everybody who's here, how can my question for you before we start, Pinky?
Sure.
Any tips? How can our participants this afternoon make the most of this workshop?
Yeah. Okay. That's great. So I wanted to take this chance to tell people that my approach to accounting is not accounting, but very entrepreneurial accounting. Meaning, so when you go through this, have these just like 3 questions. Look at it in this framework, and that's why I asked you to prepare your FS if you had, no. So it's what is this? So when I present, like the theories are there, or the formulae, or the frameworks are presented. Okay, ito yon. Second question. So what? Diba? Now that I know that, ano ngayon? That's my favorite question that even I teach at the master's program, and that's my favorite question. Ano ngayon? When they answer me something, ano ngayon? So, meaning like, so why is this important that I learned this? What does it mean to me? What is it telling me? Because it's like a whole bunch of numbers, but those numbers are telling a story, and those numbers don't lie. So, like, diba, I always say, we all need this. Like people say, you all need a friend. We all have lots of friends, but you need that friend who tells you the truth. That's your number. So they're going
Mhm.
to become your new best friend. So this is so what? Ano ngayon? What are these numbers telling me? What? Why is it important? Diba? And then the third is, now what? So to me, how do I now put that in my enterprise? How do I use these frameworks? So as you listen, not in a vacuum, but in a what, so what, and now what kind of framework. I'm sure you guys are expecting that kasi naman it's a workshop, but still it's a limited time workshop. So a lot of it is take home knowledge and take home exercise. Pero yon, parang just always ask yourself, so to me, how do I apply this? What do I do
Mhm.
with this?
Yeah, very good point. So, as we go through this workshop, ask yourselves those questions. As Pinky goes through the slides, what is it? What is she talking about? And then ask yourself, so why is it important? So what? So what about that? And then the most important for me, I guess, is now what? So what will I do with this information that I have now? And I think one more thing, we will go through some exercises. Pinky prepared some exercises for us. I think the goal here is really not, as you go through the exercises yourselves, it's not about it being perfect right now. Like now, oh, I have to make it perfect. All the numbers should be right. But I think what's more important is we complete the whole exercise. And so that when you take home, so that when the workshop is done, you can take the whole process home. So it's about the process, diba?
Yes, yes. It's about
Okay.
the process and really understanding it because you can always do it by yourself now when you get it.
Yes. So we also have some time for questions later. So please use our Q&A box. So we'll answer as much questions. Pinky will answer as
Yeah.
much questions as possible as time permits. But yes, if you do have questions in any time of the workshop, please put it in the Q&A box and then I'll moderate it.
Yeah.
So there, the floor is yours, Pinky, and
All
very
right.
excited to
Yeah.
learn so much again from you this afternoon.
You were so quick to say I'll answer. You were
Oh,
like,
okay.
we'll
Fire.
answer. Tapos
Will
biglang, no,
answer.
you're
I said like,
answering.
no, I'm not the person to answer any of the finance and accounting questions.
No, you're hearing this. For those who attended the before, uh, I'll be repeating some stuff, of course, but I hope that you look at it. I'm sure you'll still learn new things, diba? So, Patch, mga two more, you're the one who's gonna teach now.
Nako.
Okay.
May test naman.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
sige. So,
Sige.
I'll screen share now
Yes, go ahead.
after you. All right. So, you see it?
Yep, good to go.
Yeah. Okay. So, uh, financial vital signs. Why is it important? Di ba, like in your health, you're always looking at your heart rate, your kung ano-ano. So it's the same. The health of your business is seen in your numbers. So go to our what, our so what, and our now what. And I just wanted to say at this point that I'm happy to be able to work with a lot of SEs, social enterprises, and micro enterprises because uh, the dropout rate is so high, but with intervention in financial literacy, there's a big improvement in the ability to stay sustainable. So I'm really happy to do this as a mission and so happy to be joined by you guys here this afternoon. So I always start with this funky thing. People find it very funky. I say, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is king. So we always hear about cash is king, pero why is revenue vanity? Because everybody like goes, ay, Tito Pinks, I'm 5 million na. Or Miss Pinky, I'm 10 million na. Okay, pero 5 years down the road, oh, I'm 20 million na. Are you profitable? Hindi pa rin. And they're like about to give up na. So it's good, like all these numbers that we talk about, because as we're going after scale and high revenues, but it's good to always be reminded that we will stay sustainable and have our sanity if we're profitable. and then we will go about cash is king. So this term about cash being king was first used by the Volvo CEO when he was talking about the market crash, the financial crisis of 1987. So it was the companies that had a lot of cash, uh, good cash management, that were able to really survive the crisis, to pivot, or just to really stay alive. So that's parang that's the beginnings of this mythical cash is king. As I was saying earlier, we're we're a very measuring society now. We measure everything that we do with KPIs for everything, even ourselves, our sleep time, our waking time, our calories, our running, our everything we measure, but we don't. But a lot of the times we don't apply that same rigor in measuring to our businesses. And what you cannot measure, you cannot manage. So if you want to really manage your company well, your systems, your people, you have to measure. Because there has to be, of course, the longer you are in business, you can always say, gamay ko na yan eh, gut feel. But trust me, the more you know the numbers, the better your gut feel becomes, the more accurate it becomes. Because it's a matter of practice, and a lot of the gut feel is actually experience. And so many people who are experienced, when they actually applied the discipline of really putting numbers, they realized they were able to unlock what seemed like small and minor things. When they were able to unlock it, it made a big difference for their company. So I will be giving more of those examples as we go along. So our outline for today, we will discuss financial science in these three areas: in your profit and loss statement, in your balance sheet, and we will talk about working capital management as we look at your balance sheet. And we will also focus, especially in this time of lockdowns and pandemic, that we really need good, strong cash management. And then we will also touch a bit on forecasting and budgeting, and then summary of key actionable points. Now the workshop, we cut it into mini workshops. It will be at every step, like one topic, and then we will do a mini workshop para hindi lahat, not everything will be all the way at the end. All right? So, we start with profit and loss. So, inulit talaga. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. So these are the questions to ask. Like, what do you ask yourself when you look at your P&L? Like when your accountant gives it to you. Good if you're the one preparing it. Diba? But then somebody does it for you, and you give, so many small enterprises or entrepreneurs have closed or come to me crying because they said that they thought it was like this, naloka daw sila by their accountant. So what are the questions to ask yourself when you look at your P&L? First, you really have to look at the revenues that are put there, especially if you're doing planning and budgeting. And kasi minsan, it's easy to pick a number from the air, but how realistic are all these revenue streams? And it's not just oh, it's not realistic. It's also really an opportunity seeking chance. Like when you're looking at it and you're saying it's not enough, your mind should really go with the saan pa? What else? What are the other revenue streams that I could actually be having considering what I have? Then you look at your costs, you look at your contribution margins, your OPEX, and your net income. So we'll take them one by one. So your sales line obviously is where all your P&L starts. It's just really how many do you sell, at what price do you sell it, and that's your revenue. Or cost of services, like how many hours of service do you give, or number of services, whether it's a product or it's a service, you still account for it that way, that there's a cost to every service and a price for every service that's rendered. So in looking at your revenues, what are my streams? You also analyze, in being able to know if you will be able to deliver that kind of revenue, will I be able to deliver at the same quality, at this price, at the promptness that my market expects it? Because if not, then you know that those revenue projections that you made are going to drop. So you're constantly looking not just at numbers. As you're looking at your P&L, you're actually looking at your quality checks and all everything that goes into achieving this one line. How many can I sell? At what price? Am I still offering the right product for my target market? At this time of COVID, have I pivoted to something essential? Or even if it's a non-essential, is it still something that I'm able to bring to my market at a reasonable cost and time? And then, so that's the revenue side. And then you have your cost of goods sold or cost of services. So what are these? That's, eto na yung mag-ano. But you have to know the difference between your variable costs and your fixed costs. So your variable costs are costs that change as the goods, as you produce more or less. They are directly related to production of the goods or delivery of the service. For example, your raw materials are variable costs, your direct labor are variable costs, your, let's say, factory electricity, if you're a manufacturing concern, these are all variable costs. And fixed costs are whether you produce a single unit or 100,000 units or none, they remain the same. Of course, there are some costs that plateau in nature. Like, for example, at production of 10,000 units, this is the size of your factory and the rent cost. The moment you go to 100,000, maybe you need times 5 of the space and your rental goes up, but they plateau. They are not tied on a per unit basis to a product, nor on a per hour basis to a service. So regardless of volume, they remain pretty much the same. Like if you're not producing anything or you're producing 500 units, if you have employed a supervisor who has a monthly salary, that's a fixed cost. And you have to pay them regardless of whether you have production or no production. Hindi siya sumasabay. Your raw mats, you might say, well, I still have to buy them. I committed to, I already ordered them. I still have to pay for them, but we had to stop production for 2 weeks. It's still in your books as an inventory at that point, not yet a cost item or an expense item. So if you look at that line of cost and units, your variable cost is directly proportional to your number of units. At zero, it's zero. And your fixed cost is a straight line because it's the same regardless of business activity. And your total cost is the addition you take by adding your variable and your fixed. That's why this entire panel, the width of the fixed cost is what was added to variable to come up with your total cost. It's important to know the difference in our next as we talk about contribution margin. And I will show you how a lot of business decisions in differential accounting are made using contribution margin, not total cost. So now we go to contribution margin. Okay, so here's your sales minus your variable cost, whether total or per unit. That will show you your contribution margin. Now, why is that called contribution? Okay, so here. Sorry, Patch, I forgot to ask you this kanina. When I move my cursor on my screen, can you see my cursor? I'll assume. So, the revenue line shows you your sales. The variable cost line shows you your cost to produce your product or your service. And it can also include cost to sell, meaning items like commission because commission is attached to the volume of sales. The difference between your total sales and your variable cost is your contribution margin. It's called contribution because this excess is what contributes to the payment of your fixed cost. So there are so many names. You can call it contribution margin. Sometimes you will hear it called gross margin. Sometimes you will also hear it called gross profit. But I use the term contribution margin when I explain it and I teach it because it shows uh, how important it is for you to be able to pay your fixed costs or your OPEX. So if you look at the level below fixed costs, any contribution margin contributes to fixed costs. It does not matter how small, but it contributes towards paying your fixed costs. So example, you have sales of 100,000 and your cost of service or cost of the goods, the direct cost is 60, your contribution margin is 40,000 and that's 40%. So that's your contribution margin ratio is 40%. And let's say, example, you're making a decision. Somebody came to you and said, during the height of the lockdown, example, you're into fashion, and someone came to you and said, can you make masks? But our budget is only 10 pesos, example. And you might say, well, 10 pesos, it's so low. You start computing your salary and the salary of your supervisor and your rent. And you say, no, it can't pay for it. Wag na. Hindi. When you analyze go or no-go situation, your fixed costs are there. You're going to pay your rent no matter what. Unless you let go and you retrench your people, you're going to pay them. So you look at the contribution margin of that particular contract. So if, let's say, producing it it costs you 110,000 direct, then that's when you say, no, I'm not going to do it because the contribution margin is negative. But if the contribution margin is positive, then you say yes because any amount will help you pay your fixed costs. Let's say your fixed cost is 50,000. If the contribution margin is the 40, then you are not able to pay your full 50, but the 40 does a lot towards paying your 50,000. So contribution margin is used a lot in differential accounting, in making decisions on whether to do a project or not, or to add a new line, or to discontinue certain lines if you have multiple lines and you are making a decision to continue or discontinue certain lines. Differential accounting will really use contribution margin, not total sales, but contribution margin. Okay. And then from contribution margin, you want to look at managing your operating costs. Your OPEX, your salaries that are fixed, your cost of accounting services, your utilities, you ask yourself, what else did I forget? Because we've helped several clients who talagang in doing their costings, nakakalimot lang. They just forget one thing and it's the thing that either makes or breaks their profitability. So sometimes you forget that we incur communication costs or that now this is the one thing that gets forgotten a lot. It's like, oh, so how did your bag make it to the client's home? Oh, that's why pala I had all these charges on my credit card. Lala move, I forgot to add it to my costing when in fact I should have added it. And if it's directly related to the sales, this should go up to variable cost to making every sale. But if it involves, let's say, the delivery for your like your supplies, paper in the office, or getting to your clients for meetings, then these go under operating expenses. And then after that, this is I just really use simplistic things because it's on a slide, and the more zeros, the harder to see. So, and then you put your other income and expense items like interest, income or interest expense, and then you have your income tax, which is at 30% for corporate, and then you have your net income. So, net income. Earlier, we showed how contribution margin, it's the gross profit that you make that contributes towards paying your fixed cost. And looking at the total cost versus your total revenue, your net income is where the green portion is where you have net income. That's a profit because your total revenue exceeds your total cost. And the red portion is the loss because the lower you sell, the less you sell. If you look at your total revenue line, the less you sell and are not able, at zero sales, your loss is equal to your fixed costs. And the more you sell, the more you're able to contribute towards paying your fixed costs until such point that you turn a profit. So what is this point called? That is called your break-even point. This line right here where you neither make money nor lose money. You are selling just enough that the contribution margin from that sales pays for your fixed cost. And the formula, it's okay. From after here, we will have a very quick workshop on profit and loss where we can apply this. So your fixed cost divided by your contribution margin ratio gives you your break-even sales. So at this point, so I can check questions also. We can do a quick workshop. I will show you you have your sheet, the sheet that says P&L. I will show you a few computations and we will discuss contribution margin ratio, and really ask ourselves this question. So is that enough to cover our fixed costs? At what point do we break even? And then we will start looking at profitability trends. You cannot look at your FS isolated. Na, okay, wow, I did 20% net income and I made 5 million in sales, and so 20% net of 1 million. Is that good or is that bad? You will only know if you compare it with something else. Either you compare it with your forecast and budget. If it's your first year, it's really just versus your forecast based on the market study that you did. If it's not your first year, you will be comparing it to your previous year. You will be comparing it to the budget that you made for the year. So at this point, I'm going to shift to an Excel sheet. It's really boring. I wish I could have Excel on Canva, but no. So I will go to an Excel sheet and we will discuss, and then just type your questions also on the chat box. So ito na, my eyeglasses are already gonna come out. Okay. So I'll just check quickly the chat box if there's okay. Thank you. So okay. Here you go. So numbers are my best friend enterprise, profit and loss statement. And normally when you do an income statement, or that's also the other name, income statement, you for the period, you define the period that you are doing this for. So you can say for the year, for the period January to December 2020. Or you could say for the month of September 2020, and then you have your annual beside it. So it's always for a defined period. So here, units sold. Let's say we sold 200, what do you want to sell? 200 notebooks, and they're really nice notebooks. So
Hi,
selling
Pinky.
price, yes?
Oh, can you share your screen?
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh,
the
I
Excel screen. Yep.
ooh la la. Okay, I thought that it was already sharing. Okay, I'll stop and I'll share again. Okay, sorry. Share screen. And then I really thought it was the one already. So sorry. Thanks, Patch. There, do you see my Excel?
Yep.
Okay,
Perfect.
there. So I will go back. Profit and loss statement or income statement, and it's like for a period, like January to December, or for the month of ganon. So a defined period. And so let's say we sold 200 notebooks and our selling price is 700 pesos and we produce it at 300. So here, sa cost per unit, this one I do it as a completely separate workshop kasi mahaba talaga ang ano mga importante dito. Your raw materials, your labor, your factory overhead, like your delivery costs, your everything that has to do with producing that one notebook. Product costing. And there's really a lot that goes into product costing. And this is where you have to be at your OC best. Know your business. And you know what? I really have to say this. It's a mindset breaking thing. A lot of entrepreneurs I talk to say, I don't do that kasi allergic ako sa numbers. Or they just see numbers and they start to nosebleed. No, think of it think of it this way. No one knows this more than me because this is my business. This is something that I produce with my own hands. Or this is a service that I conceptualized right from the start. So I may not have the framework to do it, but I know it. So your accountant will have the framework, or your best friend, or whatever it is, but you know when there's something missing there. You know, like because I know it, two people cannot make that because where's the leather? You didn't put the leather in the costing, and my cover is leather, or I painstakingly glued it. Glue was not in the costing. So remove that fear by saying you know it best. You know, like, talagang it sounds so simple, but that mindset breaking thing has helped so many already that have consulted with me. So I say it, experienced or inexperienced, I still say it because it's something that a lot of people just treat as allergic ako. When I see numbers, I just see them all swimming in front of me. And just take that out and say, I know this best. So there you go. So your sales will be, of course, your number of units sold times your selling price. Your cost is your number of units sold times your cost per unit. So you might say, why is it not the number of units that I produced? Why is it the number of units that I sold? Because what you have produced but have not yet sold is in your inventory, not yet a cost. It's still an asset. You still have it. So it's not an expense. You expense it against a sale because your asset now is no longer the product. It's not with you anymore. Your asset now should either be cash from your sale or a receivable in case you sold it on credit. But the item is no longer with you. So now you expense it. And then I put here an example for direct selling cost. Example, if you give, let's say, a 2% commission on every sale, you multiply your sales by 2% and to get this direct cost. Because it's zero sale, zero commission. That's why it's a direct cost. And your contribution margin now is your sales minus your cost of goods sold minus your direct selling cost. That's your contribution margin. And the ratio is your contribution margin divided by your sales. So now you're saying, oh, so for every peso that I sell, I get 55 centavos. And my cost is 45 centavos. Some people will ask me, what's a good contribution margin? That's a question I always get. Ay, nako, favorite answer. You're gonna hate it, but it's the answer. It depends. It depends on your industry. It depends on the competition. It depends on how unique your product is. If you're the only one selling it and people want it or need it, you could have 200% there and you could still sell it, but you will sell few. So that's when you run your pricing scenarios. You could say, for example, at this point, you could say, okay, selling 200 units at 700 gives me 77,200, contribution margin of 55%. Then you can start playing around and say, if I reduce it to 600, what will happen? So you put your 600 here and say, oh, my contribution margin went down to 48% from 70s, from 55. And I only now get 57,000 instead of 77. But what if at 600 pesos, I'm actually able to sell, let's say 250 instead of 200? Am I better off or no? Parang hindi. Because at 250 only units sold, at 600, I only make 72,000 versus the 77. So either I'm okay with, that means like my market is really maxed out, like the market that can pay is up to the 250, or I just haven't explored a new channel. And so at this rate, at selling at 250, I'll say, no, it's okay. I will do my 200, but at 700, because I'm better off getting 77. But I could also say at 600, I was able to sell 250 using my existing channels. But I didn't even bother pala. My gosh, there's this new online shop that everybody who loves notebooks goes there. And suddenly I was able to sell 350 units. So at 350 units, at 600, I now make 100,000 contribution margin. Of course, I will choose to sell at 600 pesos selling 350, because 600 selling, because it's now better, it gives me better contribution margin than my 700 units, 700 pesos selling 200 units. So I'm sure you get it by now, like how you can play with your sheet. Just set up your formulae correctly and you're going to be able to do it. It might even be that, let's say, your sales goes from 200 to 350 because you're selling at 600. What else can change? You might go back to your suppliers and say, well, I actually am producing 150% more now. So you give me a discount for my materials and your cost per unit actually goes down from 300 to, let's say, 280. Diba? And then now you have this higher contribution margin. So just set your template correct and really play with your scenarios. So you might say, well, how do you know what to put in these scenarios? That's where you, the entrepreneur, comes in. Because no matter how good your accountant is, you're the one who knows your market. Because you're the one who made that decision to enter that business. That means you knew your market, right? You're the one who would know best. How many can I really sell? What is the price elasticity of my market? Even if I put it up to 1,000, my 200 core will still buy. If my 200 will still buy at 1,000, even if my cost goes up again to 300, I will take this because it gives me 136. Why will I have the headache of producing 350 units if I could just produce 200, because this loyal core will buy it at 1,000. So those are the things you have to play with while doing your numbers. Kaya sabi ko nga, di ba, I told you earlier, it's entrepreneurial finance. It's not accounting, because these are the decisions that an entrepreneur will make. So, okay, so that's contribution margin. So with that contribution margin, now, how many, I look at it in terms of contribution margin per unit. Then contribution margin total divided by number of units sold. Also, each unit I sell gives me 386 pesos. Why is that important? We will go in a bit. Then you have these operating expenses. Kunyari, it's your operating expenses and your total is 41,085. So your and that's that. And your operating income is therefore your contribution margin minus your expense. And your OPEX, we assume in this case, is your fixed cost. And then you have interest, example, interest cost or interest expense. I'll add it as expense. You have interest expense of 200. So your income before tax is 35,915. You apply your income tax of 30% and you end up with net income of 25, which is 18% of sales. Sales always being the 100%. So this is the point again where I get the same question. What is a good net income rate? Again, it depends on your industry. So, balik ako. I'll give a few examples. Let's say you're in FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods. Gosh, you know that their net percentages here are so small. It can even be as low as 1 to 2% only, but the volume is in billions. So even if you only make 1%, but with the big volume, it's still worth the effort. In service industries, a lot of them, it's hard to even make 15%, 10 to 15%. It's quite difficult. It depends on the competition. If you have a certain way of doing things, technology that's so unique to you, or you're a first mover and no one else has it, you tend to have higher net incomes unless you're still in the stage of your business where you're making a lot of mistakes also. But in general, the more competition, the lower, because price really becomes a factor. So the best thing to do is to study your own industry and look at how are my competitors doing? There are available information. What like if I'm making 5% and everybody in my industry is making 15%, I'll really look at everything that I'm doing and say, why? Diba? So we answered the two questions of contribution margin and contribution margin ratio. And now I had a question there, at what point do I break even? So now I will unhide this because I didn't want it to distract you earlier. Okay.
Pinky,
So yeah, sorry.
quickly, we have a question, I
Yeah.
think, before we
Yeah.
continue.
Sorry, I didn't see it. Yeah.
Yeah. We have a question for someone who is in the service industry.
Yes.
Kasi you
Okay.
mentioned some things in the service industry, right?
Yes.
With your example, kasi there's here that there's cost of goods sold. So
Yeah, or cost of services. We can do
or
something
cost of
different.
services.
Yes.
How
Here.
yeah.
Yeah.
How does that apply if you're in the service industry? Say,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
accounting
Okay.
service or tech service,
Yes. Sige,
How's
I'll give
that?
an example. For
All right.
services, let's say you're a cleaning service, right? So your cost of services direct would be how much labor do you pay? Like if you're selling a deep clean service that's a 6-hour service at a client with a home of 100 square meters, example. So you put in 3 ladies or 3 people, combination, gentlemen, lady, ano pa yan siya, basta 3 very good workers for 6 hours. And how much do you pay them? Then you add your cleaning solutions. Ano yung nagagamit? One by one yan. Like how many liters, milliliters of solutions do they use for one deep clean? You add the cost of your rags. Like let's say if you use it 3 times and then you throw. So the cost of the rag divided by 3 jobs. That's the amount you will put in this one job. You pay for a van and a driver to take them to the job site. That's part of your cost of service. You give them uniforms for going to work. So that's the cost of your service, but you're not going to charge the cost of one uniform to that one service. If the uniform that they use is, let's say, good for 50 uses, before it's really faded and you don't want them to use it anymore because it carries your brand, then you divide the cost of the uniform by 50 jobs and you charge the one job to the cost here. What else would go into a cleaning service? Your vacuum cleaners. So Again, you're not going to charge the cost of your entire vacuum cleaner, buying a Hyla or a Rainbow vacuum cleaner to one job. You're going to say, this is good for 2 years, example. So you say, cost is 120,000. I'll divide it by 2 years, by 24 months. The cost of that's your monthly cost. So how many jobs do I do using Hyla in a month? You divide that, and that's the cost that you will put in. So it's really the most painful part of doing any costing. This cost of goods sold or cost of services. But if you get this right, you will do well, because a lot of problems happen with wrong costing. As in, somebody came to me once, said, I really don't know what's happening. But the more I see, it seems like the more I sell, the more I lose. So we went to her costing, and she was like, kasi I just averaged, kasi I just estimated. And I was like, no, go line by painful line. This is where you go line by painful line. And I have to say also, if you have multiple product lines, I line by painful line per product line, per item. Because a lot of business profitability has been unlocked that way. Example, somebody came to me consulting. They had a really big problem with their contribution margin. And she was wondering what was it in her sales mix, that there were months when she would only make 20%, and some months where it was even negative contribution margin. So I asked her to prepare her per product virgin coconut oil, body spray, massage oil, each and every product. And it turns out she had 600 SKUs. And she was like, can I just do it by category? I go, no, not by category, by product. And talagang she was about to cry. And I said, you want your business to be profitable? Do it by product. By size, if you have it in 3 sizes pa. So she did it. And in doing that, we saw that out of her 600 products, only 10 products were bringing in 50% of her contribution margin. And by whittling down, but she was saying, but my store has to look good. I need at least a collection of 25 different products. I go, well, there you go, 25. Don't put 600, produce 600. If your best sellers are only 10 and you only need 25 to look like a good collection. And it turns out pa that the thing that was selling the most was the one that was practically break even only. So, kaya ang liit ng contribution margin. So, when they adjusted and whittled down the number of products, I think we ended up with 60 in the end. Because parang butal masyado. We ended up with 60 products from 600, and doing price adjustments and really focusing on the contribution margin of each one. It was quite a turnaround for her business, and she hasn't looked back since. So, yun.
Yeah.
I hope I answered the question on cost of
Mhm.
services. Yeah.
There's
Any
a follow.
other?
There's another
Yeah.
question related to service,
Yeah.
specifically in the art industry. What if
Okay.
the output is both a good and a service?
Yeah. So,
As artists, right? Artists
yes.
have to pay themselves for the amount of hours
Yes.
spent making the
Yes.
piece, the artwork, then
Uh-huh.
factor the materials. Is it
Yes.
best to separate those costs?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was great. Okay. So for that, number one, yung materials, hiwalay mo, because a material is material, right? But your artistry, you have to who's to put the right value on your artistry, right? So it's really you and the market. Because no matter if you say it's worth 1 million, if the market is not willing to pay 1 million, then it's not worth 1 million. Or if you only valued yourself at 1,000 per hour, but your market is lapping it up, you might want to review it. So do your materials cost that's separate, do your labor that you hire out and that's easily replaceable as an separate, and then add it, and then price your artistry very separately. Now, there are two ways. If you are producing one of a kind pieces, then everything goes to that piece. Like it's a sculpture. All the hours you spent have to go into pricing that one sculpture. And it's not just the hours, there's a price for your creativity. I mean, art, that's why art, I mean, one painting can be from 500 pesos to 500 million, right? So the, it's a value. It's not no longer a price, but a value placed to that. But in doing your costing, you place a value to that. Now, if you are designing something that will then be produced in multiples, then you can separate your direct hours, supervising and whatever, and separate your design cost, because that's the one again where your valuation will come in, and then make a decision to spread the design cost across the number of pieces that you will produce. If you're producing 10 pieces, then the design cost gets spread over 10 items. If you're only producing one, then everything gets charged to that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question before
Okay,
we
sure.
continue.
Sure.
Clarificatory siya.
Mhm.
Tama ba? So the cost of goods sold, is it like capex or capital expense,
No,
or it's totally
okay.
different?
Yeah, it's different. Okay. CapEx is an investment you make that is an asset to you now and then gets spread out via depreciation, and it's the depreciation that enters cost of goods sold. So for example, you're going to buy a sewing machine, and a sewing machine that you will use for your production. When you buy the sewing machine, it will enter your balance sheet, next page, sige, go, as an asset, a fixed asset. You put the cost. Let's say you bought it at 150,000. And then you say it's going to last me 15 months, para madali. Okay, 15 months. So it's 10,000 per month. So in 1 month, I or if not months, you can say the sewing machine will last me 150,000 pieces. Let's say I can produce 150,000 pieces using this machine before it conks out. So that's 1 peso per piece. So what you will charge to your cost then is the depreciation of 1 peso per piece. So capex is capital expenditure, meaning it doesn't even fall here as an expense. What falls in the OPEX as an expense, let's replace one of the items here, would be depreciation. There. It's not going to be the entire 150,000 cost that you bought it with, but the portion of that equipment that has been used, and therefore kasi nalalaspag siya, so it's now of lesser value to you. Like you cannot sell it at 150,000 today if you've used it already to produce 500 units. Yun. So that's what goes into expense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks
All
so
right.
much. All right, let's
I'm glad.
continue.
Okay. Because I didn't put it at the start muna kasi baka masabaw. But I was like, if they're gonna ask, they're ready for it and they'll ask. So good. Okay. So break even. At what point? Like you're saying now. So with all of this, I have this. How do I know? It's like, what if I don't sell 200? Or what if I had to price drop to 500, let's say? Oh, did I break, oh my gosh, like at 500 pesos, selling 200 units, I'm lugi. Look, why am I lugi? You can see it pa lang mo. Your contribution margin is 38,000 and your total OPEX is 41 because you didn't adjust your monthly operating cost. So you're asking yourself, no, at what point do I break even? Diba? So, so selling price of 700. At a selling price of 700, here, if you want to know your break-even point in pesos, your fixed cost, you take your fixed cost of 41,085, you divide that by your contribution margin ratio, which is this 55%, and it tells you that at sales of 74,506.48, you will break even. So, proof, you might say, why don't I break even at 41,000 pesos or 42,000 pesos of sales? That's lagpas na my fixed cost of 41,085. Why don't I break even? Because it's not about your sales. It's about your contribution margin. Kasi nga, for every unit that you sell, you have a cost to produce. Or for every cost service that you deliver, you have a cost for that service. So, to prove that this break-even point is at 74,506.48 of sales, if I sell 74,506.48, my contribution margin, multiplying this by my contribution margin ratio, I will get exactly 41,085, which is my fixed cost, and therefore I will have zero operating income. If you want to know it in number of units, like 74,000, but I want to know it in number of units kasi baka naman hindi ko kaya. So, my fixed cost of 41,085, what was our contribution margin per unit? It was the contribution margin divided by the number of units, or you could do your sales per unit, cost per unit. So at 386, wow, I just need to sell 106.43 units, notebooks, or number of hours of service to break even. Wala naman kasing 106.43 of a notebook, so you round it to 107. So there you will ask yourself, now, is 107 doable for me? Like under the worst case scenario, if it's doable, then you're in a good spot because you know that at 107 units, you've broken even. But let's say your contribution margin is way lower. Let's say you price it. So kanina, I remember 107 units. Let's say you're not moving. You're not able to reach man lang 200 units at 700. You're having a hard time. You drop this to 600. So if you drop it to 600, your contribution margin now is 288 per unit or 48%. And now you need to sell 143 units just to break even. And you start to worry and you say, it's kasi last month, I only did 120. The other month, yeah, I did 150, but I did 120 last month. And then parang I'm not hitting 140 more than I'm hitting it. So you know then that it's not a good break-even point to be at. So there has something that has to adjust, whether it's your OPEX. You might say, you know what, I'm going to, let's say, rent a smaller space or negotiate with my landlord and pay rent of only 4,000 a month. At 4,000, suddenly I break even at 133 units, right? Or at 79,000 pesos of sales instead of having to sell 146. If that's still not enough, you have to go and say, my cost is too high. Ano pa bang pwede? Then, the one where you did kanina, the himay, line by line, that's where you're going to go back and say, exactly where can I make an adjustment? Or maybe you realize, oops, my machines pala are able to produce, are usable pala for one extra year pa, or kaya they're able to do 10,000 more units than I thought they could. And you adjust your depreciation, and your depreciation pala is only 1,000 instead of 2. And when you adjust it again, oh, there you go. 129 units, I'm going to make it. I'm going to break even. So that's the beauty of understanding your break even point. So if you sell this much, here's your direct cost, and that's now and then you're selling your commission. You have to put all your direct costs, or like if it's a service, you have to make sure that like if you're giving a finder's fee to someone or a referral fee for every service that you're able to book, then that referral fee per service, you have to put it into the formula because you will incur the cost together with the booking of the service. Yeah. So I love contribution margin. It's such a wonderful tool to understand your profitability. Because a lot of the times we look here, we look at OPEX because it's the easiest to understand. And in fact, it's the fastest way because you cut it. But sometimes you've really like, you're like, I'm bare bones, and I'm still not making it, but you don't know up to where to adjust. But if you do your break-even analysis, you will know na okay, I just need to find 4,000 more. Then you start looking where you're gonna find that amount because you know kung anong hinahabol, what you're going after. Oh, mouthful, a lot. Any questions?
We're good. No questions
You're
so
good.
far.
Okay. Whew, we survived that part. Okay. So, uh, we have one more part of the workshop. The one where my third question was. Diba? So we answered this. Wait, am I sharing? Right now, I'm not.
Not yet.
Okay. Go share. Here you go. All right. So we
Yep.
answered what's your contribution margin? What's your CM ratio? Is it enough for you to cover your fixed costs? At what point do you break even? Diba? And then last, what we talked about kanina na, how do you know it's good, it's not good? What are our profitability trends? What are the major factors contributing to your good or bad business performance? And I will say at this point, it's not enough to say COVID eh. No. You know what? I've had clients nag-tip quintuple yung business during COVID because they pivoted. They really found a way to pivot. Like she was like, what do I do with all these sewing machines and all my experienced sewers and no one buying my fashion and my shoes and all? Ay, ano bang in demand? PPEs. Oh my gosh, like she found a friend who knew how to make a pattern. They made a pattern for the lab gowns, the masks and everything. And in 2 days, they were bought the tela. In 2 days, they were making PPEs like crazy, and the business went up way better than when she was selling fashion. I have another food that they used to. It used to be hard for them to compete with the normal food sources like supermarkets and all of that. And suddenly, the moment lockdown hit, and he was so quick to go online with delivery, and not even online, Viber, yung mga ano lang, like little posters ang saying we're selling, help the farmers, and times five yung business niya in the first 2 months. So my challenge to him after that second month, he said, "Oh, Tita Pinky, it's doing so good." I said, "Your challenge now is everybody's copying you na. They're doing it. What's your next move? If you want to always be ahead, what's your next move?" So it's not it. So if your answer at this point is just COVID, then you haven't dug deep pa. Dig deeper. Exactly what? Exactly what about COVID happened that you weren't able to pivot the business? Or if you pivoted and say, I did so well, wow, good. Document it and it, have your team know it and always go back to that story whenever you're looking at pivoting something. And you might even say, if I was able to do this during COVID, can you imagine what I can do without it? Yeah. So those are the things to think about. Like, keep asking the so what and the now what until you're happy with the answer that you're getting. All right. I'll just do a quick time check. Okay. Are we good to move to the next?
Yes, we're
Yeah.
good.
Okay. So like in looking pala, one more related to number 3. So you can do the sheets that we did earlier, you can do them comparative 2019, 2020, then put your projected 2021. You can compare your contribution margin ratios and say, oh, I went down in 2020, but in 2021, this is my plan because why is that my plan? Bakit ako sisipa? Oh, because, I'm super unique in that all my hotel rooms are socially distanced, and when the moment people can travel, they're all gonna run to me, and therefore my contribution margin will be 50% because they're willing to pay premium for a work at home kubo in Siargao or whatever it is. And then you can compare and say, wow, like I wasn't able to adjust my OPEX enough this year with a big drop in sales. I barely moved my OPEX, and maybe that's why I lost money. Then you could look at how you're growing year on year for your sales, gross profit, literally everything that helps you make a decision. Have a good look. Wag palagpasin. Like when you're looking at this now, you're saying, oh, all numbers, my head's swimming, right? But if we try to tell a story, what story will this tell us? What's the story here? The story maybe is that, wow, like one of the stories here could be that you're just like overly optimistic and it's wrong. Or another story could be the market for this is growing so much, and yun nga, we said earlier, they'll be dying for it, and they'll come and and be willing to pay this price, but I will only need to hire, I don't need to hire anyone extra, so my contribution margin will go so much higher from 8% in pre-COVID to 25% this year, because my workers all said that like no increase, we're all willing to help each other, like really makabangon, ganyan. And then um, that those could be the stories hidden behind these numbers. All right. So next. So those were the vital signs that we looked at, profit and loss statement pa lang. Now we go to the balance sheet and working capital management. And what will we see here? So here, what is my, kanina what's my P&L telling me? Ngayon, what is my balance sheet telling me? Always ask yourself, what is this paper with all these numbers, or what's this screen telling me? So, ito na naman siya. So, on the left side, think of it this way. On the left side is are what you own, OWN. On the right side is what you owe, OWE. So, pagmamay-ari ko at kautangan ko. So I have cash, I have AR, I have inventory. So these are called current assets. Why are they called current? They are movable, they are already cash or transformable into cash within a year. Later, I will show you some analysis where it's important to look at it being transformable to cash in way less than a year, especially at a time like this. And you might be wondering on the right side, why did she say I owe? How can I owe when there's capital there and my retained earnings and my current year? How can I owe that? Diba? The reason I look at it in that framework, it's what I owe. Because diba, when you invest, you're expecting a return. When you get money from investors, they're expecting a return. When you put in your own money, you're expecting a return. In other words, the business owes it to the investors, the business owes it to the people who provided the capital to give a return. Kaya, it goes with the column of what you owe. So, own and owe. So we'll go through a few concepts related to this. So what are the important vital signs to look at in the balance sheet? What does the balance sheet tell you? These are the two most important things that your balance sheet will tell you. Your current ratio will tell you your ability to pay short-term obligations. You know that the accounting definition is due within 1 year. Really, parang nowadays when we plan, lalo na the ones with very little cash, you're really planning weekly, daily, monthly, or 3 months. So do planning as often as you need based on the cash that you have or based on your current ratio. So it shows you how you can maximize your current assets to satisfy your current debt also. So the short is, for every peso of utang that I have, how many pesos of pambayad? And for every peso of debt, how much do I have to pay? So this is the current. The long-term ratio shows you the company's ability to stay solvent. Current ratio is liquidity. How liquid are you? Meaning, how quickly can you transform what you have into cash to pay your obligations? Solvent is, are you able to stay in business for a long time? Do you have enough long-term assets that you can use or sell to pay down also your long-term debt? At this point, I also want to talk about matching of debt. Some people, out of lack of opportunity, maybe, like imagine if you are borrowing short term to pay something that will benefit you over the long term. Example, you if you're going to buy machinery, big millions worth of machinery that costs you millions, or even just in a cleaning service, again, a vacuum cleaner that will cost you 150,000, excuse me, you want to, if you need to borrow money for that, you want, if the vacuum cleaner will last you 2 years, you want to try to match it with a loan that's also a 2-year loan, because the income from that will help you pay the loan. Imagine buying something for 150,000 that you will see the benefit over 2 years, borrowing 5, 6, or debt that you pay at 3% per month when you don't even make that. For example, if you don't earn 36% in a year, or borrowing 150 payable in 3 months, short-term loan, 3 months lang. But imagine the pressure of finding 50,000 a month to pay 150 over 3 months when the thing that you bought will benefit you in 2 years pa. But if let's say you have a contract that you will deliver in 2 months' time, but it's a big contract like you've never had before, and you need to buy raw materials right away, and the best that you can get from your supplier is 30 days, but you can only collect after 60 days because that's when you will be able to produce and sell and collect. So if you borrow that same 90-day debt, the 3-month debt, to buy those raw mats, to pay for it, it's fine because you will get the money back in 60 days and you will be paying it over 90 days. Yung mga ganon, that's matching. So don't use short-term debt to pay for something that's long-term in benefit. Now, the other way around, some people may say, well, if I get a long-term debt to pay for something that's current, that's okay if you see your business lasting for a long time. But can you imagine if something happens to your business in 2 years' time and you still have so much debt outstanding because you borrowed such a big amount for something that's very short-term benefit. So the wisdom, the common wisdom is to match your debt structure with the need, also like the currentness or the long-termness of the need. So let's look at current ratio. So normally your current assets, as we said earlier, is your cash, your AR, and your inventory. And your current liabilities are things that you're going to pay also within the year. And salary is not within the year. You're going to pay that in the next 2 weeks. And accounts payable will normally be what? 30, 60, 90 days. So let's say these are the amounts. So you have 25,000 in current assets, 12,500 in current liabilities. That gives you a current ratio of 2:1. It's telling you that for every 1 peso of utang, you have 2 pesos to pay. So ito na naman yung ating stop. Where I get questioned that, what's a good current ratio? Somebody will ask you, what's a good current ratio? Well, it depends. Okay, ito na naman. But generally, 2:1 is a pretty good ratio. So someone might say, why can't 7:1 be a better ratio? I'll sleep better at 7:1. Sure, you'll sleep better at 7:1, but that means your money is also sleeping. Because if you have that much cash in just there, lying there, you have 7 pesos of cash for every 1 peso of current payable. That means you're not investing enough, either in the business or in some other business, or putting it somewhere. It could be in marketable securities, but that would be, if it's just marketable security, that would be low in income also. So that means you're not investing enough. You're sleeping well, but your money is also sleeping. Now, if your current ratio naman is 1:1 lang, or less than 1, then lots of sleepless nights because you're always running after where will I get the money to pay my next pambayad. This is a big problem always. Wala man lang akong pansweldo in 15 days and they're scrambling for money to borrow. So you don't want that situation. So this illustrates current ratio. And I didn't even put na pala long term here. Okay, so what are the vital signs to look at in looking at your working capital? So I'll go back. Later we will do exercises in current ratio, okay? And then there's quick ratio pa. So now let's look at what are the other pa to look at when you look at your balance sheet. So aside from current ratio and long-term ratio, let's look at our working capital. You hear this a lot, diba? What's your burn rate? Lalo na when you're pitching to investors, they'll ask you that always. What's your burn rate? What's your runway? What's your cash conversion cycle? What are these? Or what? And then pupunta tayo sa so what and the what now. So your burn rate actually is just the amount of cash that you use each month. So pretty much it's your OPEX at the very least. It's your fixed cost if you pay them monthly. And it's your purchase of raw materials, your payment of direct labor, your payment for the van that you use, and all of that. So that's the amount of cash you need each month just to keep going. You can the more normally you'd calculate on a monthly basis, but during the lockdown especially, I had 4 or 5 clients that we were helping them do it on my weekly at my isa, oh my gosh, by the day, because every collection that she had made a big difference in her decision kung she can still keep paying her people or she was gonna let go. So we gave her a template where she could do it daily talaga. But normally monthly, you would know your monthly burn rate. So there's a gross burn rate. That's your cash out per month. For your salaries, your subscriptions, your taxes. Don't forget your taxes. Minsan, ay nako, by the 20th of the month, ubus na. And we're like, oh, we need to remit your VAT. And wala na. Nakaabono pa ako. Oh my Lord. And then there's a net burn rate, which is cash out, pero there's also cash coming in. You're collecting, right? So that's your cash in. And by doing that, you're really helping to extend your runway. So your sales and your collections give you cash in. When do you use gross and when do you use net burn rate? When you want to be conservative, you have to use your gross because the collections is a big if. Like, what if you don't get paid? Or sales, what if you're not able to sell enough on cash? Because if you sell it but on credit, you will still have to collect. So the gross burn rate is what you use when things are very tight and you want to be conservative. But to do it right, you use your net burn rate. But you can do both also and just see the difference. How much allowance you have for dropping off on collections and sales. Baka naman that month is a slow month or there's 4 days of banking holiday in that week and you know that this will drop completely. So it's just really a simple addition of everything you have. So with this, you can say, I'm burning 20,000 pesos per month. That's my burn rate, 20,000 per month. And your net could be that's your cash out, and you have a cash in from collections and sales of, let's say, 10,000. So your net burn rate is 10 per month. So then that's what you say, my net burn rate is 10,000 per month because I collect average of 10. Pero gross burn rate ko 20, assuming I don't collect anything, I don't have any cash in, my cash out is 20,000 a month. And that's my burn rate. Now, your runway. What is your runway? It's amount of time you have before you run out of cash. So what's your total cash divided by your burn rate? You have cash of 100,000 on hand, your burn rate is 20K, your runway is 5 months. So everyone when lockdown happened, this is the first thing everyone computed. What is my runway? How much cash do I have right now? I have a runway of 1 month. How do I extend this to 2 months? Or I have a runway of 6 months. How do I preserve this? So this was the number one thing that a lot of people really computed when lockdown happened. So you could see that without collecting anything, you have 5 months. But if you're able to collect and therefore are operating on a net burn rate, your 5 months suddenly becomes 10 months. That's a lot of breathing room, that extra 5 months. And it really allows you to make decisions that help people, especially in lockdown when I was very happy to note that the social enterprises were something else in that they didn't let people go. They were just like calling me every day. Am I doing my runway and burn rate calculation correct? Because I'm trying to do what I can to keep all my people fed and taken care of and with PPEs. So the last would be your cash conversion cycle. So how much time does it take you to convert your investments in inventory and other resources into cash flows from sales? Okay, it sounds like a mouthful, but when you put it in a visual, it's easier naman. So you have the cash, you buy materials, you pay your payables, you convert it, you produce it into inventory, you sell it, it becomes receivables, then it goes back to you as cash, albeit supposedly bigger kasi you made a profit from the sale. The cash from outside comes here. Somewhere between inventory and AR, receivable, your value grew. So that's your conversion cycles. How long does that take? And this is how much working capital you need. Because the longer your conversion cycle, the more working capital you need. If you're able to make it ECOT faster, meaning if I have 100,000 in cash, I buy materials, I pay people, I convert it to inventory, I sell it, I collect it back to me in 30 days, then I don't need much more than 100 or 120,000 in cash because I will have that going around every day. But let's say it comes back to me in 3 months. Then 100,000 is not enough working capital. I'll need at least 300. Diba? So that's why conversion cycle is so important in calculating your working capital. So this is from the time it goes from your warehouse to your customer, and then you bill your customer, and the time that you collect, let's say it takes you 10 days to sell, 45 days to collect. But then it takes you 15 days to pay your supplier. So na-extend mo rin yung pera ng konti. That is your entire conversion cycle. So your 10 days from inventory to sale, from sale to collection, and then from the time you buy till the time you sell. So your total cash conversion cycle is 40 days. You have 100,000 today, it comes back to you as 110 or whatever your profit margin is in 40 days. So and if you are able to shorten, let's say you shorten your collections from 45 kanina to 15 days now, but it takes you 20 days to pay your supplier, and this one is 30 days, and your total is now 25 days, your cash conversion cycle is now 25, just because you really cut your collection time. 25 days, that means that your same 100,000 goes back to you as 110 in less than a month. Then that means you need less working capital, because that keeps going back to you for you to use again. But if it takes you longer, then you'll need more working capital. So you have to know this very well. How long does it take me to get from store to customer? How long does it take me to collect from customer to back to me? And then how long or how short do I pay suppliers? Now, in the cases of people who pay direct labor, like services, your suppliers are people. You're not going to make them wait so long to pay them. Or if you're buying from communities, you can't say, oh, give me 60 days credit. Hindi. Normally, we pay them as soon as they deliver. So, wala pang minus to. It becomes purely 30 plus 15 plus the advance pa to the communities that we buy from rather than the other way around. So it becomes an addition rather than a deduction. And you need more working capital that way. So the shorter your cycle, the faster you're able to get your cash back and to reinvest. And the longer, syempre, the more working capital you need. So um, if you have your FS, I want to give you a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes for whoever wants to take a nature break, whatever break. And some of you, can you start calculating this based on what you have? And then after 5 minutes, we come back and we do a computation together. Patch, is that okay?
Yep, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have
So
a nature break. 5
yeah, for
minutes.
everybody. Plus, you can start calculating like on your using your own
Mhm.
FS.
I'll do the
Okay,
same.
see. Yeah, sige nga. All right, see you in a bit.
Pinky. Hi. Hi. You're on mute. We have while waiting, can I have a
No, yeah,
question
we
here
can.
from Anne?
Sure.
If your business is in manufacturing, when
Yes.
does your cash conversion cycle start? When do
Okay.
you start counting
The moment you start your buying your ito, wait, I'll go
materials?
back siguro. Actually, I'll go back, ha? It's, okay. Pwede na ba? We can resume na. Is everyone in na? Para naman sa explain.
I think we can continue. We
Yeah,
can
we can
start now.
continue na. Okay. So, Anne, um, the from the time your days inventory outstanding, diba? That's the time that's the time na you have it na up to the time you sell. Then ito yung sa collection. Okay, now this one, this is where your ano will come from, your buying of material. So let's say you pay you pay your people, or you pay your supplier in, let's say, 5 days, then this is minus 5 lang. So it becomes 30 plus 15, that's 45 minus 5, then it's 40 days. If you pay cash, then walang minus. It's really this plus this. Kasi it starts from the time you start paying. So if when you start paying, it's a zero if you pay on cash, and it's in effect a negative if you made utang, like from your supplier. Kaya may minus siya. So it really starts from the time you pay. So if you buy your raw mats, and that's your day zero, you have to add here the production time. Production time, then time to go to the warehouse, then from the warehouse to your customer. So it's from your production time. Dito in this this warehouse looking thing, in this manufacturing looking thing, nandito siya. That time it takes you to produce and to sell, to get it into the hands of the customer from the time you buy. Is it clear? And you're okay with ano?
Yep,
Okay.
it's
So,
okay.
yeah. So we go to the example. Okay. Uh, I think I have to go to my Excel now, and I will share my. Okay. Same as kanina. All right. Okay. If we look now at our balance sheet. So, kanina, di ba, in doing your P&L, as like it's for the period. This one, it sounds funky in English, but that's how it is. As at. Like as of to right now, or as at today. So it's as at date. Or you can just put the date. Like it's not up to December 31, but rather like December 31. It's one day, or December 21, or whenever you're doing it. That is the date. This shows you the financial condition of the business as of this particular point in time. Think of it as a snapshot. Like you took a photo of it right now, and that's what it is. So here's your current assets, as we discussed earlier, and here are your current liabilities, and then your fixed assets, and your advances, your capital, and also what I own and what I owe. All right. So, our guide questions. Oh my God. So, what's my burn rate, right? So, my burn rate here would be, what would the burn rate here be? It would be your, in our P&L in this example, everything that's here to here that we pay monthly is part of our burn rate. And if there's anything in our raw mats that we need to pay for monthly, that's also part of our burn rate. So let's assume ito yon. So this is everything you pay. So based on this cash here, 12,000 lang siya. Oh my gosh. Tapos yung burn rate niya, 37K a month. That gives you a runway of, it's even less than 2 weeks. It's only 0.46 of a month, di ba? Talagang this is a no sleeping situation. So, something has to happen there. Kasi this is actual cash lang naman for a runway. As in cash talaga. Or you can add your marketable securities kasi you can withdraw that from the bank naman anytime. So what can you do to improve that? What can you do? You want to shorten your cash conversion cycle. Diba? Kasi look, you have, unless this is already the shortest it can be. Pero parang hindi siguro. Kasi look, you have 20,000 in inventory, 13 in AR, and only that much cash na but parang 2 steps away pang inventory. You have to sell it first to convert it into something that you can even collect. And then you have to collect it to convert it into cash. So if you look at your current ratio is normally your total current assets, right? Including your inventory. Your prepaid expenses would normally be, let's say you paid insurance for 1 year and you have 4 months left on it. So the 6 months became insurance expense. The 4 months is still prepaid. Pero yan, hindi mo yan ma-convert to cash. Kasi it just enters, it's there to be expensed for the next 4 months. So kung titignan mo siya, you will say, oh, under my current ratio, divided by my liabilities, ang konti lang eh. Ito lang, accounts payable, salaries payable, accrued expenses of 15.5. My current ratio here looks like it's 58 here divided by 15. Ooh, 3.75, meaning I have 3 pesos and 75 centavos of current assets for every 1 peso of current liability. But, so it looks good. It looks good, 3.7. Pero titignan ko, wait, it's all in inventory pa and in AR. So I have to sell my inventory pa, and my inventory normally takes me 40 days to move it, and then it takes me normally 60 days to collect. Oh my gosh, hindi pwede. So now I need to know what is it's called a quick ratio. Quick ratio is really your cash and cash equivalents and your AR. They call it pa acid test ratio. So this one is just your cash, your marketable securities, and your AR, assuming that you can collect it right away. Those 3, tatanggalin mo yung iba kasi the others are not movable to cash right away, divide by your total liabilities. And suddenly, you're down to 1.95. And you're still saying, well, that's not bad. That's practically 2:1. Not a bad ratio. But it includes my AR. And lately, my clients have had a hard time paying. My AR umaabot 90 days. So how can I even consider that enough to pay my salaries? And my payables are falling due in 30 days. So this was your buong current ratio. This was your quick ratio, or it can also be called acid ratio. And then last, I really want to do, what's my cash ratio talaga? Do I have enough cash? So I will count cash and I will count marketable securities just because the bank just needs 1 day notice that I can withdraw it, ganyan. And I divide by this and I say, oops, suddenly it's practically just a 1:1. I barely, if I miscalculate anything, I won't have enough to pay. So those are the ratios that you study when you look at your balance sheet. Because this is what will let you know if you will sleep well or not. Any questions? Yung pagka-usi ko, ililipat ko siya sa... Okay. Any questions so far?
None so far.
Yeah. So, okay. So when you were doing I want to hear a few volunteers. Like when you did your burn rate, your runway, or your quick ratios, what was, like, give me a few on the chat. Type, what's your runway? I want to see like what your runway is looking like. Yeah, may sumasagot. Wala. Walang nag-compute. Sige na nga, siguro lahat kayo, 6 months runway.
Ayan,
Sige.
6 months. I-assume natin 6 months.
Kasi
yung
they all
isa
did their cash
yung
planning
isa
so
negative.
well. 6 months runway.
Yung isa daw negative daw sa kanila.
Sabi niyo.
So next time na lang daw.
How did runway
4 months.
So okay. So when you do your runway, yun, 4 months. That's good. So when you do your runway, you're not negative. It means your cash is negative because you're supposed to get, no matter how small, but you should get Yeah, point something,
Something.
like a positive, but a positive number, unless your
Mm-hmm.
cash is negative. So just check na lang your formulas and what you did to compute it. Your runway is just your cash, amount of cash that you have divided by your burn rate. Okay, so 4 months. So nag-survive siya, ano, patapos, I mean, not patapos, after like 8 months of pandemic, she has a runway, he or she has a runway of 4 months. Pretty good, di ba? Okay. Uh, so we'll go to the next one. Ooh, I'm trying to keep my energy like, yay. Alrighty. Any other? Okay, so we talked kanina about profit and loss. Then we talked about working capital. And working capital is everything from your cash to your AR. So you can fund your receivables and you can fund your inventory. Kasi even receivables, sabi mo, that's from my client to me. Yeah, but you have to fund it. Kasi for as long as you haven't collected it yet, alangan naman you won't produce anything new and you'll stop production and close your factory. So you're funding your receivables, you're funding your clients' purchases because you need the money first to keep your factory going while they haven't paid yet. Diba? So we discussed that. Now we will look at cash talaga, especially since I get a lot of these questions. I tried to look through all your enterprises kasi iba-ibang size. Eh. May malalaki talaga, may maliliit, may 1 year pa lang, may 2 years, may 5 years. So I'll just present like kind of the different scenarios that people came to me with during the pandemic. So I came up with this 3 Ps because they were all like asking. I was like, I need to have a framework for this. So I came up with the 3 Ps, which is preserve, prepare, and prosper. Okay. So what's the diff, or when do you use what? So for me, pag extreme ang cash position or extreme ang circumstances, your first ano is I have to preserve for what I really need or what is most important to me. So part of that is you will be cash planning as often as needed. As I said nga kanina, some were doing daily because part of their preserve for them was not preserve na parang bahala na. No, they wanted to be able to still pay their people, although quite small amount every day, but they wanted to be able to send, um, or they wanted to keep their factory open even if they cut production by X amount. But the cash planning was really being done weekly na, or in some because they were expecting big collections. And it was so hard to collect the first 2 weeks or first month because everybody was preserving. Talagang daily yung planning. Pag may pumasok na collection, sineselebrate. So, how do you extend the life of your cash but within parameters? Of course, we take care of the needs of our people. Always, di ba? We will take care of the needs of our clients and we will have to pay our government payables. I mean, there were temporary waivers or extensions, but after a while, we still had to pay them. Hindi talaga pwede, otherwise penalty. So the thing to do at that time was really double down in collections. What we did in our case was we identified which clients were doing very well because their businesses were in essential services and which would really have a problem. And parang because of the relationship, we really went to them proactively and said to the ones who would have a hard time, we understand you're really having it rough. So don't think about your utang to us. Saka na, when things go better. But next week, let's meet, let's talk about what your possible pivots are. I'll help you. Ganyan. And our clients naman, because of that, na when they were having a hard time, na we were very understanding and that found a way talaga to work with them, when things got better, my gosh, they were just like, mamaya-maya we would get a message, hey, remitted ganito. They were paying and yung mga dating 60 days, 45 days, 90 days, biglang naging 15 days. They were really helping and they're like, tulungan lang to. So that's what happened. And then existing inventory, you want to turn it over as quickly as possible. Yes, you will lower your margins a bit, but you will want to recover. And in fact, there were some retail na their brand kasi doesn't go with having a sale. Hindi pwede. So they found creative ways to do it. Eh, yung iba, diretso, sale, talagang nilalabas kasi they'd rather get their cash back because that's extreme. You have to preserve. Then, of course, there were subsidies. Kung meron pang hindi nakakuha, please go and apply for if you weren't able to get and you are entitled to. A lot of the micro enterprises were able to get. Now, second, if you have a little more elbow room, you have a little more cash, you found out after preserving for the first 2 weeks, hindi naman pala. This is where you do a cash plan to find what should I invest in? Because remember, with this crisis, there's also opportunity. Maybe this is the time because you're not so busy, you can do internal strengthening. If you're not that busy like before, or you can upskill your team. Like, di ba, the first 2 months when things were closed, that was a chance to do a lot of Zoom training for people to upskill, and there's a chance to clean up a lot of systems, things you never had time for. Then maybe this is where you can think of, you know what, I have cash. I will extend the credit of my clients a little more because I know them so well. When times are good again, babawi yan, and they will parang be clients for life because I helped them when they needed it the most. Because you have something. So you invest in your internal strengthening, you invest in your team, you invest in a new business, maybe na you have time to start it up, or you invest in client relationships, whatever it is, you have the elbow room to do it. And last, if you have enough to weather the crisis and a bit more pa, ito na, sa Prosper, talagang do active cash forecasting. Like, where will I really put this? Hindi yung reactive lang. Maybe there are opportunities to consolidate in your industry. Maybe there's a couple of shops or businesses just like yours that are really having a hard time making it, but once you put them in your umbrella, like you have the cash to buy businesses and put it under your umbrella, and you have economies of scale and it becomes way more profitable, then maybe this is a good opportunity to do so. You might want to invest in your supply chain, invest in improvements, invest in maybe before you only had 2 communities producing for you, and this is a time to develop 2 more, ganon, or a manpower pool, and invest in essential assets like things that will help you when things bounce back. Pero ngayon, there's a lot of supply maybe, and you have the cash. Yun. So, in studying cash, I really look at it this way. You know how we're always talking about scale, grow, scale. Tapos biglang, oops, we had to screech to a halt because you ran out of gas. You ran out of cash. And the analogy to that, kasi, I mean, I actually want to do, I should have done pala a poll, Patch. Well, comment na lang kayo. Who of you just like really look at your P&L, and who of you actually look at your cash flow statements? Sige nga, mag-type lang kayo. P&L only, mostly, or cash flow. I just want to know, like, in the room, how many of you like look at your cash flow statements aside from your P&L regularly? Sagot? Patch, are we getting any replies? But I can't see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cash flow only. Mostly cash flow only.
Not the
Still
P&L,
learning.
ha? Cash
Ako
flow.
P&L
Talaga.
only.
Ikaw alam ko. Okay,
Natututo na ako
profitable
to
nga.
check the other financial statements, but
Yeah.
instinct ko, P&L lang.
P&L,
But
yeah. Yeah. One of my mentees nga asked me, I'm making so much. Look at my net income. Look at my contribution margin. I'm making so much. Where's my cash? As in all caps, question mark. Where's my cash? Halos sumisigaw na. Sabi ko, tara, kasi you're just looking in your P&L. Let's look at your balance sheet. And then he saw his entire income na, where's my cash? Kasi nasa AR, 6 months, ganon. So, and that's why he was freaking out, because he had to in he had an opportunity na he didn't have the cash for. And he's like, how can that be? How can I not have cash when I'm making so much? So this one is that's the analogy here. It's like you're watching your speedometer. You're going faster, 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 and then you did not look at your gasoline gauge. And then fast, 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 and then boop, you just stop kasi
Mm-hmm.
wala nang gasolina. So we don't let that happen to us. All right, guys. So next, little workshop again for every topic. Here. So this one, I didn't. I will just give like a little template or format. I want you to prepare a cash flow for December 2020. That's already next week. Tuesday is December 1 now. Where did the year go? It went to Netflix. It went inside our houses. It went to Zoom. Anyway, so what are your expected cash inflows for December? What are your expected cash outflows? And then look at your net position. Will you have extra to invest? Or will you need to borrow to finance your shortfall? Ayun. And I will share the sheet for cash planning template. Okay, there you go. Oops. Oops. It went to the wrong sheet. So sorry. Cash. Sheets. Cash planning template. There. It was I want to leave the earlier one. Hang on.
Okay, so while waiting,
Sorry, it's on. Like I can see
yeah,
it.
we magparamdam
Okay,
kayo.
there,
What's
there.
your ano? Ayan. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
sige,
yeah. No,
great.
no, no. See, yeah. Like,
Yeah,
sige, crack.
ano lang tayo, konting a little break lang
Oh,
for everyone in
little bit.
for everybody in the chat room. Uh, can you share with us like so far what's your main takeaway from our previous activities workshops? Previous
Yeah, before we
workshops
go here.
before we continue.
Yeah.
Would love to hear from you guys.
Ang lungkot, no? In an actual classroom, I'd hear all their voices. Ay,
Ano yung pinaka takeaway or ano yung aha moment nyo so far?
like either it happened to you or you're parang, this explains why this happened to me or whatever. An aha moment.
Always prepare a box of tissues for nosebleeds and tears when checking your statements. A rule of thumb and keywords. So, things to do. Most common cases from the anecdotes, feeling of belonging in failures. Cash is king talaga.
There were people who were concerned, pati doctors, because suddenly their practice nawala. So I had doctor friends who were like, can we consult? Like, talagang, to the point I was like, umabot na sa, mag, put up like, in your FB page, put pictures of yourself wearing your pinaka PPE of all PPEs. Look like a spaceman already in your clinic and post it para people will not be scared to go. You have to tell them your protocols. You have to, yung mga ganun na because nga cash became a problem talaga. So,
Right.
yun. All right.
Okay, sige.
So, let's go. So, this one, I think nagsusuper nosebleed na talaga. So, at this point, I think here, what you need to do lang, kasi di ba, I asked you to do December, but normally you would do it month to month. So, I'll share with you, I shared with you these spreadsheets, right? There's monthly, and you can just change the top, ganyan, and then you put what's your current balance? So, let's say your current balance is, let's say ito, at beginning of December, and then this is Jan, Feb, yeah. Beginning of December, let's say you have 56,000 pesos in cash. So you have net available cash for use of 56. And then, all right. What are you expecting coming in? Oh, I'm expecting to collect the following, or my normal collections. Let's say I'm expecting, halimbawa, 40,000. Okay. So my expected, what else? What are the other inflows pa? Uy, I applied for a grant, or I won BPI Sinag, and the 200,000 will be given next week, or whatever, or like maybe I applied for a small grant of 50, then I'm selling some assets, I expect to get 5,000 from there, and then I have a loan that's, pero it's not coming in December, so wag muna. Then I don't have any refund, so okay, my expected inflows, I'm gonna have 95. What are my expected outflows? Oh, I have the suppliers. Toto, I need to pay a total of 35,000. And then I have payroll of 20. Kaya halimbawa, and then I have rent to pay of 5,000, I have utilities of 4,000, and internet of 2,000, and then my taxes, siguro 1,500, example lang. Okay. No refunds, buti naman, and I'm gonna pay, hindi pa ako bibili. So my expected outflows na total is 67. May nakalimutan dito. Oh, wow, it's December. I have to pay 13th month, di ba? So, I will add 13th month here. And maybe I'm expected to pay 30 in 13th month's pay. So, my total expected inflows is 95. My expected outflows is 97.5. Added to my current cash balance at the start, I have 56. At the end of the period, I will have 53.5. And then this ending now becomes your beginning here. But let's say, oh, what happens? I want to run the scenario na, I got news that parang the 40,000 I was expecting to collect, parang it's not gonna happen. Kasi, they're having a hard time, they'll only be able to pay down 10. So I redo it. Kaya nagde-daily kami with other clients nung hirap. And then the funder, the donor, was having issues, and they'll pay pala my 50 na grant in 2 tranches. They'll just give me 25 muna daw this month, and the other 25, they will give it to me next month. This one, and this one, maybe I will collect next month the balance of the 40. So at the end, of the end of December, I have negative 1.5. So what do I do? Where do I source this? Then doon ka na I borrow from friends, family, friends, and fools, or I borrow from a bank, which it will take longer to process, or maybe I can talk to my supplier and say, pwede, 30 lang muna this month, and then next month, I'll give you the 5. Ganon, para na you're back at a positive ending. So this is what this tool does for you. It's not yung pag may kailangan bayaran, saka ka masya-shock. Yun. And you can even do this for a full year when you do budgeting. So you can use monthly, you can use a weekly template, like what we did. If you notice, my templates are like May and June, like kasagsaga ng lockdown. We were sending this to clients to help them out. So it's by the week. May iba talagang daily, as in Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because they were collecting by the day and paying by the day also. So it depends on what you need. Yon. Any questions at this point?
So far, none naman. But I really like the more of a reaction. I like the template.
Gagamitin mo na.
Oo, gagamitin ko na yung template na yan.
Tapos pili ka lang what works
Oo,
for you.
for me,
diba?
mas monthly ako. Pero I think for those na manufacturing, na especially yung mga people nila, the people that work for them, arawan yung bayad minsan.
Yes, yeah.
Daily pa
Or you
siguro.
can schedule
weekly.
also. Like halimbawa, yung isang pwedeng gawin kung may manufacturing, what you can do also is you can say, okay, actually nag-slow down ako last week. So baka pwedeng i-delay lang ng konti yung delivery para ma-delay din yung payment ko. Or if you have
Mhm.
good relationships, it's where it really comes in eh. 'Di ba?
Mhm.
So, but you'll know at least if you, the more itemized it is, the more you can make decisions on
Mhm.
adjustments you need to make. But if you don't itemize it and you lump it as inflows, outflows, ang
Okay.
hirap maghanap ng adjustment.
Because when you
Naka-formula na to
see
lahat,
it,
ha? Oo,
yeah, because
yeah,
when you see it like parang as a, parang visualize it, then you
yeah,
can kind of move things around, the things
yeah.
that you
And
can be moved.
yes, you might even go like, okay, ito hindi ko talaga magagalaw to. Like, I have to pay my people no matter what.
Mhm. Mhm.
Untouchable. 13th month, non-negotiable. I give it on the 10th of December every year, no matter what happens, kasi birthday ko yon or whatever, di ba? And so, rent, oh my gosh, no, napakiusapan ko na dala sa my landlord spoke, I'm not gonna do it. That's my last recourse. Utilities, no, hindi ako, ayoko maputulan.
Napuputulan.
Hindi pwede. So, there are non-negotiables or like your tax deadlines, you know, those are non-negotiables. So, you really have to find, or you might say, oh, I was able to hasten the loan proceeds by saying, sige, instead of borrowing 100, I'll borrow na lang 50. So the bank
Mhm.
approved it faster kasi it's a smaller amount. So, I'm able to put 50 here as proceeds. Ganyan. Diba? And then, there now you have this. Whatever's your ending, will be the beginning here. So it's a pretty good template.
Mhm.
I, I purposely left a lot of blanks because I wanted you guys to populate it with what works for you, like
Right.
what you need in your business. So here instead of payroll by month, like if you're paying arawan, you really put here na if you want to use the monthly, then you put talaga the daily times the number of people, times how
Mhm.
much you pay them per day, as much detail as you can. Because it might seem like, like, times ko na lang. Hindi eh. Magsisisi ka kasi when you need to go back, ang hirap. But if you break it down, it makes decision making so much clearer also.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay.
All right, no
Sige.
questions here. I think
Yeah, I think
yeah,
we
it's a pretty
can.
easy template to use. Yeah. All right.
All
So
right.
I will stop sharing this and I will go back to my PowerPoint. All right. So kunyari, you all had extra to invest, di ba? And nobody needed to borrow for finance. Or you were able to look at different ways of funding it. Okay. Next. So this, that's what we did na kanina. So, I have Muni Muni picture. I call this the Muni Muni photo. See, I wish I could have a coffee. Um, at this point, I just wanted to think also, like somebody, there might be one or two people who are saying, what do I do if I really don't have cash? Like kanina, nag-negative. Hindi ko na mapakiusapan my suppliers. Hindi ko na hindi, talagang hindi ko na rin makolekta. Pero what's common wisdom about where to get funding if it's kulang? The common wisdom is, when times are good, you go for debt. And when times are not good, not so good, you go for equity if you have a source of equity. The reason being is that equity tends to take the longer view. Why would I invest in you if I don't believe in your business? Or why would an investor do it? Or why would you put more of your hard earned money elsewhere into this business if it's not doing well? So, equity takes a long term view. So, when things are not so good, but you have a plan on how to turn it around, pero hindi mo naman mag-guarantee yung timing, equity just is a little bit less pressure. Debt, in so we you say, why not equity when it's good? Why debt when it's good? Say, ironic as it might sound, debt overall becomes the cheaper option. And when I say cheaper with quotation like that, it's because when you get an investor, there are control issue, some control that you need to give up, or maybe the idea was so good, and if you just borrowed temporarily and paid, you own your business rather than you gave up control of X% of your business for a temporary need in a time when it was good and you could have paid. Diba? So, because there are costs other than just interest. Giving up control is a cost. Because I always say to my mentees, if you're looking for an investor, don't don't bring in an investor na yung tanging dala niya, that the only thing they bring in is money. Because money is not that difficult to find if you have a good idea. Money is easy to find if you have a good idea. If you will bring in an investor, bring in an investor who will bring in something strategic. May strategic value. Let's say, oh my God, that investor pala is so entrenched in the market that you want to attack or the market that you want to get. Parang authority siya in that niche, or like he's seen as an influencer in that niche that you want to enter. So you want to bring that person in as an investor, or he can open a brand new market for you, a whole new market for you. That's a strategic investor. Or maybe it will allow you to vertically integrate such that you control the production now kasi factory pala. Parang ganon, yung hindi pera lang. Kasi kung pera lang, maraming sources ng pera. The truth is, some people might now be saying, how can you say madali ang pera? Hindi madali ang pera. Okay, I'll be very honest. I'm seeing the other side. I have so many impact investors who are coming in saying, Pinky, I find me someone who can absorb $1 million. Has capacity to absorb $1 million in impact investment. And I'm like, sobrang konti. Wala nga akong, right now, if you tell me ₱1 million, marami akong matuturo na may capacity to absorb an investment of ₱1 million. But $1 million, hindi. Ay, ayaw namin. We just want $1 million because we don't want to deal with so many small ones. So can you imagine that? Like, but somebody with a big idea, that's really good. And there you go. So in fact, just during this lockdown, irony, 3 foreign-based impact investors have come and asked me that, and I could not like point them to anybody. May isa which had the potential, one of my mentees, pero hindi, like she could not guarantee her ability to deliver, and so hindi nagkatuloyan. So it's really, really hard. So for a good idea, a good business model, there's money. So if you're gonna get an investor, that's why I say, when times are good, you can see your business about to take off, and the investor is purely money, no strategic value, don't go for it. Go for debt, because you'll be able to beat the cost of debt. As long as you can beat the cost of debt and pay it, in the long term, it will be the cheaper option. Now, if you say, my own money, I have my own money, I can put it as equity. Sure, if that's your best option. Because what if you're growing your business, you're investing it, but your business is, let's say, making 10%, right? And you can borrow, example, at 6%. So at 10%, you're beating 6%. So you say, but if I use my own money, walang cost of money. Meron. It's called opportunity cost. So whether your own money is a good thing to put or not depends on your opportunities. So let's say you have the money to put in, but you have an opportunity to invest elsewhere that makes you 15%. But in your business, it's only making you 10. So you should use your money and invest in the thing that gives you 15%, maybe even borrow more to invest there, and borrow at 6% to put in your business that makes you 10, knowing that you are investing in it because the 10% is temporary. 10%, yeah, but growing, laki ng numerical value. Or you have a very clear plan of how it will get from 10 to 15%, or maybe it's just 10%, but it's 10% of 100 million. But debt is the cheaper thing to use there. But if, let's say, your alternative is, wala naman akong paglalagyan, I just put it in the bank and it's making 1% per annum, I put it na in your business. So it really, so that's what it's called opportunity cost. Where else would you have put your money if not there? So that's the common wisdom. In good times, you borrow. because that tends to be cheap also when times are good, and you can beat it with your net income, and you have an opportunity to invest your money in other things like new ventures or whatever. And in bad times, you do equity because it's a more patient capital, and you will not be like forever running after the payments you need to make with them. Any questions? Any
None
questions?
so far
None
from
so
the
far?
Q&A
Okay.
box.
All right. Last topic, forecasting and budgeting. So, I really like this thing. The best way to tuloy. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Parang, yeah, parang just grab the bull by the horns and really work on your business, study your market very well, suyurin mo lahat ng opportunities, saan pa pwede. Sino yung mga bumili? Your own data is a very good way to find the market. Like, who bought from me? So, itong demographic, okay, let me check data. How many are they? More that, like, where can I find more of them? How many are they and where are they? And where are the magnitudes? Ask yourself that. Like, where are the magnitudes for me to scale what I do? Saan ko pa mahahanap tong katulad nito? Because like 80% of my sales was to a demographic that's like this. Where else will I find more like them? Where and how many are they? And when you look, and there's not plenty na pala kasi I got na most of them, then hanap ka, find other things. But if you're saying, I've only scraped the top of this big market iceberg, then I'm gonna look for them. So plan for that future, forecasting and budgeting. So you find opportunities to pivot when you must pivot. Find new ways to reach your existing market. Maybe your existing market is still your most viable market. You just have to find new ways to reach them. And of course, you find new markets, and you can also create or use new distribution channels. This is really what happened during the pandemic. So many new distribution channels, like people who were never online, teleconsult, even with the doctors, diba? Like new distribution channels. Because it's really about budget. Think of your forecast. When people say, shucks, I don't know how to make a forecast, or I don't know how to make a budget. Actually, if you think of your budget and your forecast as put your plans into numbers. Lahat ng kinikwento mo, inisip mong plano, put it in numbers. That's your budget. That's your forecast. So, yung kwento in the form of numbers. Then it's suddenly less intimidating than budget or forecast. Ikaw rin naman nagtatanungin, even if you have the fantastic accountant doing your forecast or your budget, they'll still ask you, so how much do you expect to sell? How many do you expect to sell? How many people are you going to hire? How many training runs are you going to conduct so I can estimate your training cost? Are you going to do training all by Zoom na lang? Or are you still going to go back when there's a vaccine to the time when you would meet up in hotels and have training there? Like it's you who knows that. So you just have to express it in numbers. And then, so this one, I think you're super sabaw na by this time. We will just look at like tips on how to do your budget. And there's a sheet that was given. The first thing to do is always start with your sales. I mean, how can you do a budget if you don't know how much you're going to sell or how much you plan to sell? Because the support mechanism that you put, the number of people you will hire to produce, the number of people you will hire to sell, all depends on what are your plans for sales. And when I say start with sales, it's not like put a number, I'm going to sell 1 million. No, put it down to, I will sell to these 3 markets. And for each of these markets, how many, how much, how many, per product, yung ganon talagang klaseng sales forecast. Unless your is so predictable, like the last 10 years you've been doing exactly the same, growing 10%. But that might just be your starting point. You might want to challenge yourself and say, okay, this is my normal, but how can I double it? How instead of growing 10%? Yung ganon. So really do a real sales budget with how many at how much to who. Kasi dyan na lalagpak maraming people who consult and they tell me, oh, we're gonna make revenues of 40 million. Can you show me some market numbers that will justify that? Kasi, and then they start making all kwento except telling me market data. So I'm like, no, no, no. I need to know. Like, you need to know where that's coming from. Like, if you can say there's a market of 900,000 micro enterprises and a supply of only one accountant for every 500 enterprises. And there's no one accountant who can handle 500. So there's a market there, and I will get X% of this market. And so I will target out of the 900,000, no, no, 1 is to 5, 1 is to 500, I'm going to target 10,000. And this is where I'm going to find them. There will be 10,000 social enterprises. Because they exist here, 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 and this is who I am and where I am and what I have. It's really a whole conversation with yourself and your partners and knowing, understanding your market so well. So that's how you do that for your sales budget. And then the himay that we talked about earlier, the product costing or the service costing, you have to really do it step by step. Like yesterday, I'll share then for service. So the cleaning company, sabi niya, why am I not hitting my contribution margins the way I budgeted it? So I said, sige, pa-share nga, patingin. So she gave me the link on Google and I looked at it and I said, because look at your budget for your cost of service. You put uniforms, you put basahan, sure, but you did not put any cost for laundry. You're not gonna keep using those same dirty basahans, right? If you say you will use the basahan 10 times, you have to wash them 9 times, right? So, hindi napasok sa costing yung cost of laundry, the detergent, or if you subcon it outside, yung mga ganon, the little things that make a difference, especially if your margins are small. Or masyadong conservative, inassume that the vacuum cleaners can only service so much, yung pala double. So, kaya parang sobrang mali yung napasok na number. So really work on your costing very, very, very well. Go into as much detail as you can. And then you can walk through I-walk through mo yung produkto. I-walk through mo yung, like let's say if you're a bag making company, i-walk through mo. Kasi guess what's the one thing na nakakalimutan? Pasok. The little snap inside or the zipper or yung pala, there's a label that goes inside, hindi na costing yung pagtahi ng label na yon. Those things matter. So, or like in doing your service, you weren't able to adjust for the fact that you pay for your service, including their travel time. Let's say from your office to the client, you pay. But when you costed it out, you only costed for the actual service time. Example, massage. Halimbawa lang, 2 hours. So, kinalculate mo as 2 hours. Pero yung pala, ang deal mo with the therapist is that you will pay them including travel time. So, that's a big factor. Yung mga ganon. So, really go into detail. Then, what other things do you need to do to be able to sell it? Delivery or packaging, like forgot to include that there's a twine or there's some ribbon or things like that. So you walk through the whole thing, pick it apart the way an engineer would, and price engineering mo talaga, cost engineering mo yung costing mo. And OPEX, we all pretty much know how to do it, and then your net income, and then a cash flow based on your forecast. I will share very briefly the budgeting spreadsheet that I gave you guys. So, can you see it?
Not yet.
No, not yet. Okay. Hang on, share screen. All right, there. Okay,
There.
so the same P&L that we did earlier, but really do bichaga, make it month to month, depending on the cycle of your business, but month to month really, I mean, works for most, I would say. And try to be as realistic really as possible. Like if you're growing your sales, don't forget that you also might need to grow your support team. Like hindi pwedeng nag-double yung sales mo by September pero wala kang in-adjust sa salaries and wages because you just you just took the easy way and say, copy the whole year, or you just say, I'll just add 5%. No, you have to really do it like how many people. Adding one person is not adding 5%. You have to add that. Plus, like, for example, don't forget that it's not just the salary, but you normally add between 17 to 23% to account for government mandatories and the cost to train the person and yung mga ganyan. So line by line, month by month, with your total. And after that, you go back and input, and based on your plans, do your cash budget, what we discussed earlier, and do it also, mirror it for the same January to December, so that you sleep better for the year, knowing where you're headed. Also, if you're not hitting your targets and you go back to your cash sheet with the actuals, with the updated actuals, and you will see, oh, madadapa ako by next month or in 2 months, then you're able to make the right moves and say that, hindi, this is not acceptable. We need to work on our sales more. And when you do it, parang you really have specifics. It helps. I mean, and the more you do it, of course, mag-gut feel. Pero the gut feel, good gut feel, comes from knowing numbers very well. So, at this point, I just wanted to go with a little summary of points to ponder and ask yourself, and then we'll go Q&A if there are any more. So, I just usually really go with, in doing cash planning, how much do I actually disburse in cash each month? What outflows can and cannot be delayed? How long will my actual cash allow me to operate based on my burn rate? How can I shorten my cycle so I'm able to get my cash back faster? But talagang realistic revenue streams ko? Sometimes we don't ask ourselves that anymore. Or what else is out there that I'm not seeing? What are the other costs I incur whenever I sell? What are that's your variable, your fixed costs? What are the costs that I incur for even if I don't sell anything? And then here is something to think about. Which of my fixed costs can I actually move in terms of the contracts or the negotiations? Can I move towards being a variable cost? Para na, if I don't sell anything, I don't incur costs. So, one example. If let's say you have 3 drivers and 3 vans for delivery, and your sales are no longer as good as before, and you might say, I should just hire delivery for when I actually have a sale rather than pay the fixed cost of the salary and the depreciation of the van. And now I can sell the van and have cash, and I will just pay per delivery. But if I don't sell anything, I don't deliver anything, I don't pay for anything. That's an example of moving something from a fixed cost to a variable cost. Nakatali na siya to a sale. It might be more expensive on a per unit basis, but if it allows you to be more flexible, such that when you don't have a sale, you also don't have a cost, it can be a really good arrangement to have. So you can study both options. Um, yung mga like those who really drastically changed their setup with COVID, maybe there's a lot of reviewing to be done there. And then yun, contribution margin talaga to have enough to cover my fixed costs. So at the very least, you should cover your fixed costs from your contribution margin. And then in your balance sheet, you look for, at a time like this, look for opportunities to, like, let's say, oh, this one mentee, yung ba, talagang wala siyang revenues, wala na. Pero wow, when you look at the balance sheet, they had so big, kasi there are tourism companies, so they had buses for field trips, and they had tour guides. Wala talaga ang touring. So what happens? Kung may opportunity sa balance sheet mo, so yun rin natin. When we saw all the vans, ay nako, sige, imbis na turista, pinarent to people naman na yung dating nagbebenta na they could not cope with the times 5 volume. They were renting out his van. So instead of turista, ang bit-bit na ng van ngayon, sitaw, pataw, batani, delivering all the gulay from the farmers to the markets that where the consolidation areas where they would be delivered, not to the different homes. So that was one example where there was an opportunity just there. Sinuyod lang yung balance sheet. Oh yeah, I have these vans. And then then they started doing disinfecting. They were selling like some disinfecting equipment, and the tour guides, kasi di ba they're so good at explaining, kaya nga kasi they're trained tour guides, and then suddenly they were explaining how equipment was working, and it worked. He was really able to pivot. So look for those opportunities inside your company, and then looking outside, like, what else is there for me and my existing market now? Am I still able to reach them? How do I make myself known to them? And all. And is my current way of delivering effective? Who can I partner with? Mga ganon. So yeah, so not all finance decisions are number related. The numbers are just a result of all the actions that we take. And a lot of it is really entrepreneurial strategy translated into numbers to make it clear. Kasi the numbers won't lie. They'll tell you, even if in your mind you think, oh, I did well, then your numbers will tell you if you actually did well or not. So with that, I accomplished part of my mission today, which is to help with financial literacy. So you can all continue to help also your suppliers, your partner communities, your stakeholders, and keep your businesses strong, and let's rebuild this economy together. So now I'm ready to take questions, pa, if you have related, not related.
Okay.
I'll stop sharing. Okay,
All
don't wait. Do
right.
I have one more? Oh yeah, just my little
yeah.
values. Yeah, there. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I'll stop sharing.
All right. Thanks, Pinky. Oh, we let's move on to our Q&A. For those who have questions, please put it in the Q&A portion. And then aside from questions, if you have things to say like insights,
There's a lot in the chat.
please do put them in as well in the Q&A or in the chat room. Okay, so some questions that we have. So from Lina, okay, let's see this. What's our option with our unused creditable withholding tax? What would you advise me?
Okay. Magical talaga yan. Kasi,
I
ang
think,
credit...
okay.
Siguro, go, Patch.
Kasama na rin siya, siguro i-tie in na rin natin to. Like, if you also have some sleeping cash, what can you recommend to do for those things?
So, creditable withholding tax, di ba? You made an income, you billed your client paid you, nag-withhold siya ng tax, correct? And then at the end of the year, when you have your income, and you can offset your creditable withholding tax from your income tax payable. Now, on a year when it's not so good and you have way more creditable, it's not naman kasi 1 year lang. So may carryover ka pa. But you're talking, I guess, about what will expire this year. So, hindi na iikutan. Kung gusto mo, pwede kang like if you're able to maybe advance some of your contracts that you can bill ahead and recognize the income, but it will always kasi bite you naman eh. Like if it's not, if you used it this year, next year doon ka naman bababa kasi in advance mo.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
So the other would be, kasi if you're expecting next year to not be so good compared to this year, then you can really like, if there are few contracts, maybe you can advance by a week or so in December and say para magamit mo. Pero
Mm-hmm.
there's really not much way around it except to just make a bank. Kasi I think the government is also considering extending the usage. Parang they're studying it pa if they will,
Mm-hmm.
because of this year na
Mm-hmm.
was just really a black swan. No one
Uh-huh.
expected this. It was just so bad, and they are expecting that some people will not be able to use it. There are some proposals requesting for an extension, like by one more year of tax, of creditable tax.
You can't really run away from death and
Um,
taxes.
yes.
Okay, so the follow-up question or another question about
Mhm.
if you find nasuyod mo na tapos you find some cash sleeping, what can you
Wow,
do? What do you
galing, di ba?
recommend?
Okay. So as we said kanina dun, remember we did our preserve, prepare, and prosper. So under those, you can, it's a choice. You want to use that cash to just invest in something na simple lang because you might need it pa, so you don't want it stuck in something long term. Then you can just do marketable securities and things that are like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. It really depends on how long you can, that cash will be excess. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you're maswerte, you do business so well and you're perennially on an excess cash, then you might really want to find something to invest in. Either it's a new business, or you might want to invest in your supply chain and
Mm-hmm.
and buy so you can vertically integrate, or you might want to, kung nakikinig ang empleyado mo dito, magsabi, ma'am, pa-increase. O, di ba? Or you might want to invest in training, or you could be lending to some
Yeah.
affiliates who are not as cash positive. Or if your stakeholders are already asking for dividends,
Mm-hmm.
or you could upgrade your equipment. Like kung may equipment ka na hindi na masyado maganda and you have excess cash, and your productivity will improve, or your repairs and maintenance costs will go down because you upgraded your equipment, then that's an opportunity also to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, other questions?
I hear,
Ito,
may
ayan, may
isa.
isa dito. Okay.
How would we manage cash flow if 80 to 90% of our clients' standard payment scheme is 60 to 90 days? We're
Okay.
almost in the red with cash flow. Okay. So, one of the ways is number one, knowing that it's 60 to 90 days, your cash planning has to take into account 90
That.
days, right? And then there's two, I mean, you have to address half from the financial standpoint, and you have to address the other half from a relationship standpoint. Like, continually work on that relationship. Sige na, tulungan tayo. Like, ano mo naman ng konti. Pero kung hindi talaga, standard talaga nila yon, pero it's automatic, it's there. Because there's some that's really their policy,
Mm.
right? So you can also extend your payable to your suppliers. Like if you pay your suppliers in 30 days, maybe you can talk to them also about 60 days para may matching ka ng konti.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if your suppliers, like a lot of the SEs that I mentor, their suppliers are their communities, there's no way they can do 60 days for their communities. That's where you really have to have more working capital. Or
Mm-hmm.
if you can price your products or services higher so that you make more margins, that gives you more cash also. There are givens, and then there are the pasikot. So if you're in the red with cash, and look at your, baka may, yung standard, I would also say, ihiwalay mo what standard, like those who are standard 60 to 90 days. If they're in 60 to 90 days, that's fine. But if the standard is 60 to 90, tapos ang dami mo pala nasa 120 days or nasa 150 days, doon ka bakit may 120 ako? Bakit may 150? Call yun, kalambugin mo yun. Mga lato, magato ka na ng gusto na you need to get paid. The squeaky door will get the oil. Diba? The squeaky door gets the oil.
Actually, yeah. Sa panahon ngayon, sabi nga ng ni Anne, parang wag mahiya mag-collect.
Ay, wag.
Actually, I did like I had that question in my head before na parang at this time since everybody's in parang in a tight situation, is it nakakahiya ba to be masugid na mag-ask ng collect? Sabi niya, nako sa panahon ngayon, wag na tayo mahiya mag-collect.
Oo. Yun nga yung ginawa namin was the ones who are doing well, we really collected and they really paid. The ones who are not doing well, kami na yung lumapit, sabi, I know you have this much. And you know what we can do since your business is not so naman, I adjusted my rates and I said, what we can do is parang talagang in-extend ko yung terms. May isa nga talagang hindi na siya makabayad. Sabi ko, 1,000 per week. Still better than nothing. Yung you find ways talaga. Yung ganon.
Yeah, and I think this is where the relationship part comes in.
Ay,
that
grabe.
really plays a big role in the
all about the relationship na in the end. Kasi between a person that you get along with, mabait na nangulikta at yung di ba, ibibigay mo talaga sa people who also helped you before.
Okay, we have a question here.
Yeah.
Miss Pinky, how many years have you been in the industry? What was the most unusual case where you had to think outside the box to solve your mentee's problem?
My mentee's problem, pwede rin my problem, di ba? Sige. So how many years? Okay. It's okay. I don't mind talking about my age reveal. So we forgot to say our usual spiel about my life. Like you normally introduce me. She was blah blah blah. We just jumped in.
Sorry.
So it's okay. So
Sige.
oh my Lord, where do we start? So I graduated from UP, Diliman, a double major in Business Administration and Accounting. And I'm a CPA, and my first job was with Unilever, but for marketing. Because when I applied for finance, they said, no, your personality, your marketing. So I was a brand assistant for my first job with Unilever. And then after, I can you hear me? Yeah. So in finance, I worked for Schlumberger Oilfield Services. I was based out of Houston. I headed internal audit global, and I was also financial analyst, and I had a stint in treasury. I was also controller of L'Oreal. So in the corporate world, that was like, my life. And then after 25 years in the corporate world. And then I also set up a microfinance company. And I think that's where I really learned grassroots finance and needs of people. And I had like in 6 months from wala to 3,000 borrowers. Ganon. So I got my feet wet in the daily needs of people in that microfinance company that I set up. And then in 2006, I decided that I was going to stop with all the earning na kasi I really wanted to move na to the legacy phase of my life at 40 years old. And I wanted to really move to helping. So I sold that, and I co-founded, I worked with Gawad Kalinga as a volunteer and really set up enterprises in Gawad Kalinga communities, which got my feet super wet and really immersed in the communities. Because you can't come in and build and just say, "Oy, mag-enterprise tayo, mag-livelihood tayo." No, you have to gain their trust. So it's like 3 months of just visiting, nakikilat ng kasal, libing, binyag, just talking to them with their problems, being there in the good times and bad, getting their trust, and then starting to put livelihood. And then I realized I was forgetting the science part of my life. Like when I was in science, like nauunahan na ng puso, and I was like, this is not sustainable. There's got to be a way of doing this. So I took a master's in entrepreneurship for social enterprise development talaga, because I really believe in it as a way of uh, helping sustainably. So
Mm-hmm.
now I'm a co-founder of Geekonomics, which was the group that put up the social enterprise in Gawad Kilinga communities. I'm also with a co-founder for Click Escuela, where we do alternative learning systems in communities. I'm on the board of the Ateneo Center for Social Enterprise. And I co-founded ATBP because I saw in all the years of dealing with communities and
Mm-hmm.
micro entrepreneurs that this is one of their biggest pain points. Hindi daw sila pinapansin ng accounting firm na malaki. Tapos, hindi daw sila naintindihan. Hindi naintindihan na why can't I have a resibo? Because I bought this from Lola, whoever in the community, yung ganon. So, yon. So, the next question of out of the box for my mentees, or I'll can I be kwento one out of the box first from my corporate life and then an out of the box for my mentees. So
Sige.
I stepped into a situation when I took over in a controllership position. They had 300 days in receivables. So sabi ko, hindi talaga to pwede. Everybody was just talking about collecting, tawag, collecting. And hindi nangyayari. So sabi ko, I'll trace these invoices nga. Dahil a day in the life of an invoice. Sinamahan ko yung invoice from the time, imbis yung
Mm-hmm.
pa-messenger, ako nag-deliver, ganyan. So, it was, all the invoices end up in the engineering department. And there's 20 guys there doing it. And I could see stacks and stacks and stacks of it there na hindi gumagalaw. So I sat with them and I said, what, dito lang ako kasi may meeting ako ganon, tapos hindi pa ako masundo ng driver ko, dito lang ako ha. So sige, upo ako doon, pero actually, talaga nagpa-drop off ako. And then I said, oy, since nandito na rin lang ako, baka may questions kayo sa invoices namin. Ano ha, masasagot ko. So, syempre, ando na. From the stacks and stacks and stacks, naglalabasan na yung invoices ng sa company namin. And then they had simple questions lang, but because they were being made to approve an invoice, which to them is a finance document, but they're
Mm-hmm.
engineers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all the inertia. So, nakita ko,
Oo.
ito, ganyan. Ganito lang yun, ganyan. Before you knew it, talaga, I was messaging my dad, so wag kang pumasok dito na nandiyan ka na ha. Wag kang pumasok dito. Hanggang naubos namin talaga lahat. Tapos
Oo.
nung naubos lahat, sabi ko, wow, yung iba dito 6 months, kaya tawag ka na tawag, follow up sa, paano mababayaran, hindi na process kasi hindi alam paano, na inertia.
Ayaw nilang
Gumalaw.
galawin or ayaw nila i-approve.
Oo, gumalaw. So, paggalaw, so syempre, papabait-bait ako doon, 20. Paglipat naman, from there, sabi ko, so saan pumupunta to? Sabi na, doon na sa payables part. Pagdating doon sa payables part, parang iba naman ang mga personality nila. Parang tapos if you're wearing something funky, parang iba yung
Mm-hmm.
tingin. So in the end, ano ginagawa ko? There's a banyo in between that department and the other department. I would change clothes pa to match the aesthetic in that other area. Kung ano yung aesthetic doon, minamatch ko para na pag nagdala ako ng donut or whatever, para I'm just one of them rather than somebody different. And so, in 3 months, the 300 days receivables went down to 90 days. Just from talagang ganon na nagpapalit pa. So, medyo siya, ibang klaseng solution other than just call, di ba? So, with one of my mentees naman, okay, what we did was, she was about to, hindi naman actually siya super out of the box, but it's a different way lang of looking at it. Kasi, ang normal niyang way of looking at things is, syempre may standard P&L. And in the end, sabi ko sa kanya, you're making a decision to like close your business, kasi she was applying for a big grant hindi niya ma-apply kasi mukha ang liit talaga ng financials niya. Kasi nag-aabono siya sa lahat ng farmers ng allowance for the turmeric. Tapos nagbagyo, nawala yung turmeric, so they started planting again. So in the meantime, lahat ng gastos lumabas na as expense. But she had no income and no inventory. But the farmers all promised na the next harvest sa kanya talaga mapupunta. But she was not gonna get the grant on that. So sabi ko, okay, we'll have to do something a bit more creative with your financials. Talagang I explained to the funder how the allowances that she paid out is actually not an expense but a prepayment, like an advance payment for an inventory, and we booked it as a prepaid inventory and ganon. And with that, she was able to get the grant kasi from a bad P&L na ang laki ng expense, lumiit, tapos from an asset, a balance sheet na walang laman, lumaki yung asset niya kasi parang naging prepaid inventory.
Makes sense.
Oh.
I remember
Simple but
I remember meron kang nakwento before about tracing, yung the investigative part na I think it was in a restaurant, and then how the inventory comes in, the goods come in at night and then in the morning. That's a nice story.
yeah, like they were kasi parang they could not understand why they had all the systems naman, pero ang parang laging may missing inventory. So may hindi talaga nagtatay. So inisa-isa talaga tinrace yung process. And yun pala, the guy who accepts it at night does not book it. It's booked kasi shinoot na lang, tapos na. And then it's booked by the person who comes in the morning next in. So there was a big gap between the receiving and the recording, the physical. Tapos hindi mo na ma-pinpoint kung kanino yung problem at saan yung pilferage nangyari. So as in kasi pag kinuwento, hindi nakukuha. So as in, nag-observe ako. I went out. I even looked at the door. Is it being left unlocked? Ay nako, parang si Sherlock Holmes.
And how did that reflect parang in the numbers? Parang the story behind the numbers.
It came out.
Where did it come out?
Because we were wondering why the contribution margin was going crazy. Kasi di ba may standard cost, tapos may actual, and then the variances should not be too different. The variances were dancing. Like sometimes the contribution margins are so low, and sometimes it's normal, and sometimes it's so high. But there was no change in the menu. There was no change in the recipe. There was no change in the price. Hindi naman na suddenly binuhusan niya ng isang katerbang truffle or whatever it is. It's like, there's something that's causing this because sa contribution margin ko nahuli. Kaya love na love ko yung contribution margin. It's like, there's something wrong because the contribution margin is not holding. Like, and we couldn't see any. And so it was that. And the wastage, pilferage, but alerted by contribution margin.
So talagang marami ka kang makukuha. Just by looking at the numbers. And then, bakit ganito? Ito last question before we end. Well, from, I don't know if I can pronounce that, Bunny. What do you think are opportunities for the service industry, particularly online training business in 2021 and beyond?
So, aside from online training, opportunities for the service industry. There are so many services na kahit anong Zoom natin, hindi kaya ng Zoom. So, hahanapin mo kung ano yung services na yon na essential to people or how you can make your service essential pa rin. So, for example, even with my clients, like, at the start, wala. So, yung cleaning niya, nawala man yung monthly clean, yung mga nagpapalinis weekly, nawala. Kasi ayaw nila ng every week nandun. Pumasok siya, disinfection clean. Na-pivot niya. Tapos, grabe, naka-full PPE. Nagbumalik yung trust. Or, for example, what else can't be done talaga online? There's things still have to be delivered. They still have to come, Some have pivoted, like, for example, even with salons, di ba? Talagang
Mhm.
ano lang, yung basta they shorten the time that you're there, they, all the protocols, there are so many, we were looking at this, where the industries that are picking up and not, and most of them as services, where it was related to health. Of course, like we have one na nag-pivot siya. Lahat ng kanyang dating mananahe, oh my God, di ko maniwala, nagsa-swab test. Di ba? They became a
Oo.
testing
Oo.
thing. Kasi nga, that still has to be done in person. Food still has to be, I mean, physical food has to come. We can't eat virtual. Um, Even consulting, uh, it picked up pa nga kasi
Right, right.
wala nang travel time
Mhm.
to slow it down. There's a lot of ways to pivot, but the one thing is look for the essentials. That's my first ano to you. Like,
Right.
if your business is not in the essential, what pivot can you do so that you have something that's essential?
Mhm. If I
Kasi ano pa
may
rin.
Yeah, if I may chime in on the online training part.
Mm-mm.
Well, yeah, because education, even like in-person training is mahirap na mangyari ngayon. So there's really a shift towards online training of businesses. However, yun na nga, there are also some things if you plan to get into that kind of service, you have to take into consideration the how to deliver those trainings online. Syempre may Zoom na yan involved, and you also have to take into consideration the people who will be the learners, like what are their attention span,
Oo.
how do they usually consume learning, and kailangan siya bagayan. um,
Bagay.
yeah, in terms of the new normal, medyo na yan eh. Kumbaga, that's something that we have to face with, like how do we train online. So I guess may an
Yeah.
opportunity there, but
May edad.
depending on the type of training that you will do, you have to take into consideration those factors.
Patch, isa pa, sorry, I misread it
Yes.
eh. Survey, particularly pala the online training business, ang una kong basa was
Mm-hmm.
aside from. So particularly sa online training, it has to be in the medium that they want it
Mm-mm.
in and in chunks that they can take. So
Mm-mm.
like this one is long. This is a
This is
3 hour
long.
webinar, but Patch, I'm working on bite-size accounting.
Mm-hmm.
Example. I'm
Mm-hmm.
working on bite-size accounting na you watch a 2 minute, 3 minute video and it's a quick topic. Like,
Mm-hmm.
pero you can watch as many as you want and I have a suggested order in which you watch it, but not everybody will be attending a 3 hour webinar. Some
Mm-hmm.
people want it in their own time. So, yung
Mm-hmm.
mga ganun, you have to find the medium of delivery
Yes.
that
Uh-huh.
appeals to people
Yeah.
talaga, di ba?
Mm-hmm.
Yung medium
Yeah.
of delivery.
That's true. All right, so it's almost 5, 1 minute to
Yeah.
5. Sige, thank you so much, Pinky, for joining us, and to everybody who stayed until the end. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I really hope that this was very useful. That templates were useful, and if you want to continue conversing with Pinky, you can get in touch with her through her email address. She did post it, or you can type it
Wait.
in the chat,
Yeah.
just to make sure that they can reach you even after this. And yeah, before we end, I invite
There.
you guys
Just
to also give us feedback so that we can continue doing events like these, workshops like these for free. As well as thanking also the people who made this happen. Of course, our partners from Globe Telecom who made this happen for us. And if you, aside from this workshop, we do have other events coming up. We have another one coming up next week. You just go to sparkability.org to check what other courses and resources that are available there, and that could help you spark a better normal for your business. So yeah, that's it. It's 5 o'clock. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you again, Pinky. Thank you to everyone who stayed, and until our next session, goodbye, everyone.
thank you. Thank you.